what policy do you think that JD Vance has proposed, or that I have proposed, that you think is putting Peter Thiel and Elon Musk uniquely and without checks to their power in charge of the United States of America?
Well, part is the deregulation agenda of Trump in the first place, which they are policies. Look at the amount of bullshit in terms of crypto deals and AI bullshit. I think deregulation itself is a policy. That's number one. And then number two,
okay.
Elon Musk, you know, I want to impregnate as many people as possible. Like, you have obviously...
Yeah, he's a degenerate.
Yeah, so how are we confident? And they're all like, this is the Epsteinite class, or Epstein class, or whatever Ossoff said. Like, you are simping for the Epstein class.
Great quote, by the way.
Yeah. It doesn't seem like it seems like you're simping for the Epstein class, if not Epstein himself. It sounds like you're straight up a bit of a fascisty, gripery, techie guy.
Okay. Let's go to socialism as a comparison, because this is actually, it was a frustrating part of your commentary that actually...
How are you, good sir? Wow.
I'm okay. Also, if... real quick, if people are oiling you on your side, then I need to remind my chat. Like the stream, share it with your friends, engage with chat, super chats if you got them, memberships if you got them, oil, or else I'm going to get jealous of people oiling Pisco.
They were just subbing like in the, you know how you get the videos on your sub feed that no one even uses anymore?
Yep.
Yeah. That was a sub. It wasn't like I was getting, but I got some money before. So
before we start whatever we're going to do today, I need to commend you. Okay. So... the Hasan breakdown, I was ready for the sweepiest of the sweepiest of the sweepiest, and then we actually engaged with it, and there was a clip that I think Destiny did a clip on that was kind of dunky, where he was like, oh, I can't believe, you know, how pedantic Pisco's being. And then I watched I actually watched like the 30 minutes leading up to that clip. And no, you were calling balls and strikes relatively, not even relatively. You were calling balls and strikes consistently in such a way that I felt that the clip was something that sounded a little bit too sweepy, but realistically within the broader context of the prior 30 minutes, it wasn't bad at all.
It would be like me clipping you. Now, I think in this context it's an apt comparison because I think both of these positions are bad. But it would be like me trying to clip you when you say it was legally justified shoot of Renee Good or Alex Preddy, and that it was according to the law, and that you meant that you thought it was good. And I think
that would be omitting like the moral analysis and the prescriptive statements and all that kind of stuff. And so I did want to commend you, because I think there were people who were, you know, as per usual, baying for Pisco's blood. And yet, when I actually took a look at it, I was like, nah, this is pretty good. And just as an example, I don't know what topics you had in mind today, but effectively, the thing that I wanted called out in your analysis that I think you accurately called out was, well, here's the legal analysis, here's the moral analysis, and with the moral analysis, he's doing a logistical analysis instead of a moral analysis, which feels evasive, and since it feels evasive, people are going to infer that you have malintent. And that is like, that was my point. So effectively, like, you made my point for me before I could even criticize you for not making my point.
Yeah, here's what all gets ignored. Like, I start by saying I'm quite sympathetic to Ethan. I started that entire thing saying Ethan seems incredibly reasonable right now, especially given how close it is to October 7th. He's giving all the concessions that anyone on the left, whether you're a liberal Zionist or whether you're one state solution person, that you would expect that Ethan to give. And then I say that it's a morally reprehensible thing for Hasan to do the following, to do the cover aspect for his friends, reprehensible statements, to kind of be evasive about his overall conclusions until he's push, and then to sort of give this legal justification, which is probably almost certainly wrong on the law, and definitely a way to try to deflect responsibility. I graded it an F. I thought that was fair and balanced. It just wasn't what some people were saying, which is like that he is calling for the death.
Yeah, no, you just have to say Hasan bad, and that would have been, everybody would have been like, oh, Pisco's so based.
But even me saying it like that,
quick, though,
go.
Oh, no, no, no. This is actually unrelated, but I wanted to answer. Ernie Lee says, I know this is unrelated, but I've been wondering if I figured quick answer will do. Do you play Warhammer Kill Team? No, but I want to because Warhammer Kill Team is way faster than Warhammer 40K. So 2,000 point games take all day. Anyways, sorry for the interruption.
What's up with this this whole faction that like prays to robots? Adeptus Mechanicus. What is that?
So they're a transhuman cult that worships knowledge. So are you familiar with Fallout at all?
Yeah.
Okay, so imagine the Brotherhood of Steel is actually, weirdly enough, a thematic combination of Space Marines and Adeptus Mechanicus. And so what's happened is in the Warhammer universe, because this is 40,000 years in the future, they've had a cybernetic rebellion similar to Terminator and the Matrix, where AI has just gone rogue and like wiped out 90% of humanity, and humanity was on the brink of extinction. So the Adeptus Mechanicus and humanity at large don't trust AI or high technology. But the Adeptus Mechanicus was a cult on Mars that worships knowledge, and they also worship the Omnissiah, which they think is the Messiah of the God of knowledge, which the Emperor claims to be, even though he hates religion. And so the Mechanicus, they're a really interesting functional body because they treat technology as like sacred. And so any old technology that they could find, an old gun or a ray gun or a rail gun or a toaster or a car, they take the mechanical schematics and they treat it as if it's like sacred holy text. But then they're also in charge of the technology of the Imperium. So if you want to produce robots, if you want to produce war robots, if you want to produce which have to be dumb because you cannot trust AI anymore. If you want to make ships, if you want to make cars, if you want to make this, if you want to make that, it has to go through the Mechanicus for approval. And so it's kind of like a combination of medieval European church authority mixed with technology.
And this is why you're
Oh,
gay
and they're
for
also
JD Vance?
transhuman. They think flesh is weak.
And this is why you're gay for JD Vance?
No. So actually, I would say my attraction to hard near future sci-fi makes me not as hostile to the techno-feudalists as you are, because I think those people will be necessary in order to usher in like the next few centuries or millennia of human technological progress. They shouldn't be left unchecked, but they should be harnessed by the state for the next series of technological developments.
Yeah, to me, it's just like, I don't really need these fucking loser nerds who don't know shit and who are cavorting with the worst of all humanity because of some like ultra lord lore. It just seems that we don't need these egomaniacal fucking Mark Andreessen types to be involved in the coalition, to coin a phrase. And I don't know why you feel they're so essential.
Well, hey, man, if you want to find me like nicer, softer, sweeter military industrial complex people. But the truth is that we are a $70 trillion international commercial empire that requires technological innovation. And so these people are ushering in the next generation of technology that aids in the maintenance of that $70 trillion commercial empire. And so pacifism or anti-militarism would lead to the collapse of the United States as it presently exists, with horrible economic and social outcomes. So they're a useful and necessary evil.
Can I sort of map that on to a typical conservative refrain, which I don't know if you share, to be honest. So I'm kind of just shooting in the dark here, which is very skeptical of higher education, very skeptical of H-1B visas. It seems that we are contradictory. We are not 100% sold on education for the masses, or the importation, to coin another phrase, of high-skilled labor in certain contexts. And instead, we put our eggs in the basket of people who I think have not the best interest of humanity at heart. So yeah, talk me on to your view. Do you reconcile this view of, skepticism at elites, skepticism at universities, skepticism at H-1B visas with your technocratic focus on leadership? Or do you reject that more traditional, I don't know if I want to call it traditional, this more populist sentiment of anti-Harvard, etc.?
Yeah, I think this is the difference between neoconservatives such as myself, who are effectively like liberal hawks, right? And the populist populist left-wing economic right, which Donald Trump has popularized, the working class right, so to speak. So I don't trust the layperson. And if you actually look at the historical roots of both the Republican and Democratic Party, the Democratic Party has always believed that there is like wisdom in the demos. They always believed that the popular will should be carried out. It's just that prior to 1965, the popular will was in the South with the working class of the South who were racist and segregationist. Whereas after 1965, I would say basically after the Civil Rights Movement, the Democrats with the famous like party flip or whatever, the party flip kind of came with the Democrats wanted to integrate more diverse coalition into their voting populace. And so they started appealing to Hispanics and blacks and gay folk. And they viewed the civil rights fight as a way to expand their coalition. And so whereas with the Republicans, I would say, especially since the 1960s, they became the country club party. They became the party of entrepreneurs, and they became the party of business leaders and laissez-faire libertarians and technically astute, intelligent people like electrical engineers who wanted to be taxed less and have access to guns. And so what's happened, though, is Donald Trump kind of took the economic populism that the broad swath of most working class Americans feel left behind. Most middle class Americans feel left behind. And so I would say that appealing to economic populism the way that Donald Trump has done is rhetorically more of a democratic strategy, whereas his implementation of his world vision, which is effectively like less taxes, less regulation, that benefits the oligarchic technocratic class.
Can I ask?
So he's actually like a hybrid.
Got it. Have you seen It's Always Sunny?
I love It's Always Sunny. I've seen every episode up to like season 12 or 13, probably 3 or 4 times.
Do you remember when Max said like, I play both sides, and so no matter what, I win?
Yeah, so I always come out on top. Yeah.
It feels like you shouldn't be saying some of this out loud. You get me?
Why?
Because it seems like you're very deliberate and open about the fact that you are using the trappings of populist rhetoric to kind of sneak in.
Oh, I'm not. Trump is.
Well, aren't you part of that? You might not like Trump, but you don't, in general, have a problem with that strategy. You just wish it weren't.
No, I do.
Trump.
I do have a problem. I do have a problem with that strategy. I am anti-populist. I don't trust the lay person. I think the lay person is, I actually use hyperbolic rhetoric when I talk about this. I think the lay person is a fucking dipshit that's easily manipulatable.
Yeah, but you've said, for example, when you're talking about P.F. Jung, your other boyfriend, that like, these are the things you say. You say these things, and they speak to angst. And it's kind of like a knowing sort of, I don't know, it's a knowing kind of tactic, which seems to suggest that you actually don't value the enterprise of democracy. You think, by and large, the people are sheep that need to be led by their betters.
Yeah, no, have you ever heard of the term oblige noblesse?
I've never heard of that term.
Okay, so it's a medieval concept, but it's the noble obligation. And so the theory behind the aristocracy of Europe that they obviously did not follow, but this was at least a part of their cultural trappings, was that the world has vested the aristocratic class with a disproportionate political and material privilege. Okay?
You have to say that a little slower again for me. Sorry. Say it one more time.
Yeah. So the aristocrats of Europe were gifted by God or by the world with a disproportionate political and material privilege.
Got
And
it.
so, but the reason why they were gifted that was because they were the military of the ancient feudal world. They were the people who regulated commerce. They were the people who governed the kingdoms. They were the people who decided what happened in diplomacy and war and all that kind of stuff. And so you have this material and political privilege, but it comes with obligations, and those obligations are to God, and those obligations are to the people. So if you're just serving yourself, if you are only looking at the world as a self-interested, cannibalistic, Darwinian place, you're actually failing in your noble obligation. Whereas if you take the material and political privilege that you've been extended and you actually use it to make the world a better place for your fellow man, then you are actually fulfilling the noble obligation. And
it feels
so
like
I sincerely
rejection of
believe
the
in the noble
Enlightenment.
obligation.
I had a conversation. Remember this guy Nate, who was a lawyer? He used to go on Tiberius.
I love Nate Dallin.
Yes.
I love Nate Dallin. He's a phenomenal human being.
I talked to him, and he gives me a massive erection for Enlightenment values and for the founding of the country. And then I talked to you, and it seems like like you're evil. It seems like you're arguing
I
against
might be a
Enlightenment
little bit
values.
evil,
But like all this shit sounds like dark shit. I don't know. Sounds like you don't
how is
believe
it dark?
in the
Because I think what's happened over the past 50 years is that because of Reaganite, self-interested, capitalist, Darwinian leaders, we have devolved into a cult of like materialism and self-worship that could be like argued to be satanic, not literally satanic like worshiping the devil, but satanic like worshiping yourself instead of a higher power. And so what I'm arguing for is a return to principle or virtue. Now, the truth is that principle or virtue probably hasn't really existed. It's always like an ideal that people espouse, that people strive to, and they fail. But I think the problem with our society is that we don't even have the pretense of the attempt. And that's actually where Donald Trump is the most vulgar example of this, because his rhetoric might appeal to higher value or virtue or whatever. But if you look at any of his behavior, he doesn't even have the pretense of the attempt to higher behavior. And yet he's worshipped for it, which is like so perverse, it's mind-boggling.
But it feels that, the people who are these technocratic elites, as embodied in some of the Epstein scandal, say what you want to say about the extent of criminality that thus far has been exposed, though keep an eye out. More is dropping every day. These aren't paragons of virtue. Even the people that we think of as having more charitable bones in their body, Bill Gates, these are
dude, I was gonna break down Bill Gates the second you were done talking.
Well, then just like, why would I was at a Super Bowl thing and some of my family members, and I just like looking around like these are better people than the people in the Epstein Files. These are better people than JD Vance. And then I thought to myself, I said, Counterpoints wants to give the country to these like robots who are using all of our fresh water for their AI farms so that we can make like porn.
Right. So that's where we have a difference in what the elites are versus what they should be, and borderline should be bullied into being. So real quick, hold on. Why, I'm going to write this down.
Yeah.
Why give power to these like immoral vampires? That's kind of the question you just asked me. But I want to break down Bill Gates as a case study real quick, because I actually think that this could be illustrative of what we're going for. So if you look at what Bill Gates accomplished throughout his life, bear in mind, we're at the tail end of his accomplishments. He probably hasn't achieved anything amazing in like 30 or 40 years, but he was one of the people who revolutionized computers that have ushered in the information technology age. And so in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, personal computing was not a thing. Computers were just like a hobbyist thing. And not just that, they didn't even have monitors. So people were using computers by doing a bunch of inputs for like calculations and software programs, and then they were running them incapable of even visualizing what work they were doing. What Bill Gates, what Steve Jobs did is they made the personal computer accessible to the layperson through monitors, keyboards, mice, software programs, accounting programs, word processors, et cetera, et cetera. And I was born arguably at the infancy of this technological revolution. You are sitting in like not the fully mature technological information revolution, but you're sitting in a pretty mature version of it compared to where it was 30 years ago. And Bill Gates and his company, Microsoft, was instrumental in revolutionizing the face of the planet in reference to the information age. So if you can have, now the truth is that there are other people. If Bill Gates died in 1972, there probably would have been another Bill Gates produced by the material circumstances.
That's what I was gonna. Yeah, no, I think that's the interesting part, which is like, to what extent do we think that we're lacking for quote unquote true genius, and even grant that these people, you know, that we all have true geniuses? Why put them in charge of the regulatory agencies, for example, that are supposed to rein them in?
Real quick, I just want to be rude real quick. Telling this history without mentioning Apple is insane. I literally said Steve Jobs. Anyway, sorry, continue.
Wait, can you say something? I don't know if you came through. Just say it one more time.
Oh, I was just addressing a chatter who said telling this history without mentioning Apple is insane, and I specifically said Bill Gates and Steve Jobs.
Got it. Do you think that part of the success of some of these people who you really kind of, you put them on a pedestal of these titans of industry, but not to bring me under Obama's communist wing, but he didn't make that by himself. I mean, these were projects that grew out of developments of the government.
Yeah, you didn't fall out of a coconut tree.
Yeah, I mean, they were funded in part by the government. These individuals had help, and they had help by people who impose guardrails and constraints. Doesn't seem like it's smart to, given that history, unconstrain them. It seems like unconstrained, ingenuity or capitalism leads to like bad shit.
Yeah, but then we need to look at the opposite as well, which is socialism and communism. And I do mean we can actually look at so some people in the American zeitgeist refer to socialism as when the government does stuff, right? And the more stuff the government does, the more socialist it is, to quote Peter Wolf or whatever that guy's name is, right? And that's a sarcastic statement, because socialism is supposed to be the decommodification of basic human needs, workers owning the means of production, or more broadly, freeing humanity from the oppressions of capitalism. That's what socialism is supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
But
and can we pause real quick? But putting aside the label of it, we want to socialize some of the profits of some of these expeditions, you might call them, that were partly funded by or completely funded by government research. They can make their little money here and there, but it should be, I think, an aim of government to make sure that some of the wealth and prosperity is socialized to some extent. That not just the profits aren't just individualized.
You just said taxes. Yes, those are taxes. Yeah. And right now, we have a pretty robust tax infrastructure. Now, I actually like, we could talk about the American tax infrastructure if you want. But the point is that, like, if we create an entrepreneurial playing field that is constantly able to generate both entrepreneurialism, wealth, new industries, and all that kind of stuff, that's amazing. That's revolutionized the entirety of the human species. But then it does, like you said, and I agree, this is part of the reason why I don't call myself a libertarian. I believe in a state. I believe in taxation. because you should be able to tax people both as a matter of
but these
social
guys don't believe in a
participation.
state, right? These guys believe in their feudal little, you know, islands, their little whatever you
Well,
want,
I think Peter
prosperas.
Thiel. I think Peter Thiel is satanic, not in that he worships like a demon. I think he worships himself, and he also appeals to like Nietzschean great man philosophy and like Yarvanite, Curtis Yarvin, Yarvanite neo-monarchical feudalism. And I think that's a total fucking LARP. I think it's absolutely a LARP.
You don't take them seriously, like their network state shit and their...
No, they're serious and they're danger. They're serious and they're dangerous. But you're saying like, why don't you have any heat for them in this regard? I do. Well, I think they're satanic.
I think you're doing two things. I think you're opening the door potentially for them to both double dip into their rents at the expense of taxpayers and broader society, and also regulate how much they're able to double dip. And that just seems like, you know, the foxes are guarding the hen house. The Nazis are running the Nuremberg trials. It really seems like a unmistakable conflict of interest. And I don't know why you would want
Yeah,
that.
but what policy do you think that JD Vance has proposed or that I have proposed that you think is putting Peter Thiel and Elon Musk uniquely and without checks to their power in charge of the United States of America?
Well, part is the deregulation agenda of Trump in the first place, which they are policies. Look at the amount of bullshittery in terms of crypto deals and AI bullshit. I think deregulation itself is a policy. That's number one. And then number two,
okay,
it's not even necessarily a set policy that I can point to right now, though people smarter to me can and have. It's the close connection and even just assuming right now your worldview, regardless of whether or not they have proposed something concrete that I would put into that bucket, it seems to be something that you're exploring as tantalizing. And Doge.
Yeah, so let's explore those. And realistically, I put crypto deregulation, space deregulation, AI deregulation. I think AI deregulation is probably the most important between the three of those. I think that space deregulation is the one that I'm most interested in. I think that crypto deregulation is the one that affects the most lay person, the average lay person, okay? And so with crypto deregulation, I have to ask you on principle, because we did do this in the 19th century, should people be able to create their own currencies backed by their own perception of value, yes or no?
I'm not sure. I think it depends.
Well, there you go.
I think it depends what you mean.
What I mean is that Bitcoin, Ethereum, other coins, as far as I can understand, is that what, and bear in mind, I'm a very, very lay person when it comes to crypto. So if I misspeak, I'm sure a crypto expert would blow me to fucking pieces on this. But somebody kind of jokingly, but I think it's accurate enough, is imagine if your computer solved Sudokus, which generated cash that you could then buy heroin with off of the deep web. Like that's what like Bitcoin is effectively.
Well, no, but I just want to get to your normative question head on. Like, okay, assume, you know, whether or not they should be thought of as securities, that kind of thing that they should be. I think that whether or not we should treat them and regulate them depends on their usage, how widely they're used. And the more they impact the U.S. economy, the more they're used by people, I think the bigger and more important it is to regulate. Like, would I want to regulate Chuck E. Cheese tokens? Maybe not. Like Fortnite bucks? I'm not sure. But when it comes to some of these like blockchain situations that are highly traded and that are sort of viewed as commodities that, or at least as financial instruments that people like trust to some respect, I think just like, you know, stocks, just like all, you know, things like derivatives, the government should take an interest in these markets if they have a big impact on the economy, and if they're being used, like you alluded to, potentially for other kind of like illicit or hard to trace fucking malfeasance, including in this administration with the World Liberty Financial thing, whatever Trump's got going on with that, and the Trump meme coin. It seems like a huge potential for avarice and greed to extract additional wealth from poor people and from the working class.
No, that's exactly what it is. So the question here that I would say is that the value of crypto, from my perspective, is having an alternative currency that retains value besides the United States dollar. And I love the United States dollar. I love the dollar. The dollar is backed by oil and the American military-industrial complex and our international commercial empire. I love the dollar. But the truth is that I don't know what's going to happen with the dollar. So we're in $40 trillion worth of debt. Half of the experts, financial experts nowadays, say we're heading towards a fiscal cliff where our debt is going to be so large and the interest payments so large that we're not going to be able to take away from it. And therefore, it's going to run away from us. And eventually, our entire society is going to implode. Then there's another series of experts who say that that say like, oh, well, debt doesn't matter because as long as you maintain faith in the currency and a debt to GDP ratio that doesn't make people abandon the currency entirely, then you could go on in perpetuity with a large amount of debt. And I don't know which experts are correct. So having a competitive currency, and people are like, it's not a currency, blah, blah, blah. Shut the fuck up. Anyways, it's not stable enough to be a currency. Literally read the history of 19th century currency, you dipsticks. Anyways, love my chat, but they're distracting me. The point is that having an alternative currency that's based off of a different valuation offers people at least an alternative. So let's say that the skeptics are right, that the dollar, eventually our debt is going to run away and totally collapse. Well, at least you'll be able to take your, effectively your Weimar Republic $1 trillion that you need to buy a single loaf of bread. And then you can exchange those for, 0.10 of a crypto coin. And then if that's actually backed by value, you could survive. So that's where I see the value of alternative currency.
Can I put something that might sound a little crazy? I think that the push to transition to crypto or stable coins or some of these other assets has to do with a perception of control and power and the feeling that moving away from a medium of exchange, which is dominated by regulation, overseen by regulatory agencies, where it's easily trackable, that moving away from that will take power away from the representatives of the people and put power in the hands of those that control these assets or who accumulate these assets. And I just don't know why you're open to such a notion unless you really are abandoning the project of republicanism.
How is that any different than all you did is you just described a market? Like if I think Pokemon cards should be tradable. Well, should we be regulating Pokemon trading cards?
I think in terms of if they're scams, I think that they should be open. The transactions should be taxed to some extent. They should be overseen.
Sure, but you're still allowing a marketplace to flourish with people trading on a commodity largely without regulation, as long as they pay taxes and they don't. But what we legislate is the criminal behavior associated with abuses of said currency. We don't regulate the specific currency.
Well, hey, first of all,
commodity is probably a better word.
We do regulate. Again, there's a controversy over whether I think the Trump administration has said that these cryptocurrencies are not securities or whatever. But I think that we should have a new president with But yeah, like if it were a security, we regulate all the fuck out of that shit. Who can sell, where you can trade, public exchanges, that kind of shit.
Yeah, but you regulate the criminal behavior and abuses associated with the item, not the item itself.
I don't feel that we're doing now, and I think that the motivations behind some of these guys, these reptiles, that you're like, I think that you're like, well, I'll just keep the reptiles here in their little enclosure, and it reminds me of that scene. Yeah, the
reptiles are incredibly useful.
It reminds me of that scene in Jurassic Park where they're like, Remember, the Australian guy is walking up to the group looking at the Velociraptor pen. It's like, they should all be, I forget what he says, but basically that they're smart and they're looking for ways outside of their pen. And I think one of the ways outside of their pen is J.D. Vance and these kinds of people who are linked both financially and ideologically. These are all Yarvanites, and you sound like a Yarvanite.
I mean, I think the Yarvanites, they have, this is where you and I beefed about like how much do I agree with Nick Fuentes or whatever. I think the Yarvanites have a descriptive claim that is fundamentally true, which is that liberalism, effectively maximizing human freedom, is not enough to create a functioning, healthy society. You need something more. Now, there's something more, which I think is very R-slurred and stupid, is revisiting the great man philosophies of the late 19th and early 20th century, deregulating everything, and then becoming feudal lords of an anarchic ANCAP hellscape. And also like reintroducing religion and monarchy or benevolent dictatorship as a way to police the masses. I think that's a total fucking LARP. I think it's total bullshit. I think it's a way to like philosophize the problem that I do think is accurate at the core of liberalism, which is liberalism is effectively like a negative claim. It's saying like we should just not impede on people as long as they're meeting these certain criteria. Whereas I think conservatism to some degree, and also the Yarvanites, are making a positive claim of it is good to blank. But it is good to blank is what we're fighting over. You're saying, hey, just real quick, I'll try to put a pin in it. You're saying, hey, you agree with them that there is a like a void at the core of liberalism. I agree with them in that degree. But what we're saying should be the positive claim is wildly different.
Okay. I agree that liberalism isn't a framework that resolves all of humanity's problems. And it means different things to different people.
It doesn't even try to.
I don't think it attempts to. I think you're right about that. What I object to is almost in a similar vein to, I forget the exact concept, the fence concept. What was this fence concept that you introduced when we were talking about religion? Chesterton's fence. That the guardrails of American republicanism have produced some of these major accomplishments that we are rightfully proud of, internet, Microsoft itself. And these people are committed to destroying it. And it sounds like for all your qualifications there, that there's a lingering respect for Curtis Yarvin and Peter Thiel. And tell me I'm wrong.
There is.
Yeah.
No, they're intelligent. Palmer Luckey as well. So that doesn't mean they shouldn't be harnessed, though. Let's walk through that. I do want to talk about space deregulation and AI deregulation because I think they're important. But I could actually probably do that as a part of the Peter Thiel thing. So let's, and actually Elon Musk is a excuse me, is actually a perfect person to launch into as well. So not everybody in the dissident right and not everybody who is a techno-feudal bro is a subscriber to Yarvanite. To Curtis Yarvin, excuse me. Curtis Yarvin, all he is effectively like a blogger who came up with some interesting critiques of liberalism and then proposed new monarchy and techno-feudalism as a way to, combat the degenerative nature of liberalism. That's all he is. He's basically a fancy blogger. And so they brought him to San Francisco and they brought him to parties in New York to intellectualize their own ambitions to become techno-feudal lords. But Elon Musk, I don't like Elon Musk. I think he's cringe. I think he's autistic. I think he's kind of an idiot. I think he's a blowhard. I think half the projects that he's promised, he hasn't delivered on. I think he's a tool in a lot of ways. And even being like the world's richest man and tweeting out at 11 p.m. saying, it's really true that money can't buy you happiness is so pathetic that it's almost like laughable how pathetic he is as an individual. However, what he did, which no one else did, and the state could have done, but there was not the willpower or the interest from the American public, is he got a rocket to go into Earth orbit, carry 300,000 pounds worth of gear, go 17,000 miles an hour, cross the planet in 90 minutes, basically going from like Cape Canaveral to the Indian Ocean in 90 minutes. I don't know if you know how fucking far that is, but that's far. And then land successfully in the Indian Ocean. And this same rocket design could be used. I'm not saying it will be, but it could be used in order to, let's say that we don't want to colonize Mars because of all the biological challenges of humans moving to Mars. We could actually still create effectively like a robotic Martian colony that studies the red planet and basically develops it for human use. And then we could also use the asteroid belt to the species advantage. And that is now possible through this revolutionary technology. I'll leave it with Elon because my next rant would be about Peter Thiel, but that was 3 to 5 minutes. So I'll just let you respond to that.
Well, I think that Elon is a prolific exaggerator, deadline non-compliant person who, for example, I mean, need we go on the promises about self-driving cars, the promises about Hyperloop, the delays and shitty things going on with the rockets. People are telling me that there was no payload in what was happening there. I'm not really a science guy. My critique is more about the structural powers concern. That I think that there's a legitimacy of power concern into a kind of model that's being proposed to let the smart guys be smart guys and run, hurry up and break things or run around and break things. And by the way, I talked to Stale 2000, the celebrity Reddit mod, and he also seemed to buy it. Like, I was shocked when he said, "I'm a Republican." I'm like, "What? You're like in the DGG community?" He's like, "No, yeah, I'm like, Mark Andreessen is my idol." And then I stood back. I'm like, we have an issue. We're like ignoring these people and like ridiculing them too much. And I think that they are polluting your mind.
No, he's a San Francisco tech bro. That's one of the interesting things about Stale is, as much as he's been lolcowed like a motherfucker, Stale apparently makes 6 or 7 figures in San Francisco.
Yeah, but I don't want Stale running the treasury.
Sure, but I would want Stale. I don't know what his specialization is, but what I would want is let's say Stale was working on Boston Dynamics robots that were humanoid enough to do everything that a human can do. Or let's say he was working on war robots like the dog robots or the mule robots that are commonly seen in military-industrial complex. What I would want to do is, and let's say Stale was like a multimillionaire with the intelligence in order to actually pursue this and achieve this. I would want a public-private partnership between Stale and the government that says, you are pursuing this dream. We are going to give you subsidies with limits or tax incentives with limits to achieve this public good through your intelligence. And then once the product is complete, we will use it for whatever state purpose or public purpose is actually available.
Right.
And people are
just pause you right there?
Cynical.
Can I just pause you right there? Because I would be okay in theory and concept with an arm's length transaction. But what I think is being done under Trump 2.0 is not an arm's length transaction. I mean, I know this is a different kind of fact pattern, but for example, Trump is suing the IRS for $10 billion. All of it is incestuous, and the people that he has installed are all the other side, and that's a big issue for me.
No, it should be. There should be a going back to the concept of the noble obligation and all that kind of stuff, is that a lot of these people, they believe that the noble obligation, they believe that virtues, they believe that Christianity are slave morality developed by ancient peoples to restrain the geniuses and the military leaders and the great people of their society. And if you subscribe to Aristotelian virtue ethics, if you subscribe to Christianity, if you subscribe to kind of like a systemic analysis of how society works, you're effectively like a cuckold for broader society, because they're basically Sith. You know, I don't know if you're familiar with Star Wars Sith philosophy.
I'm familiar.
Okay, well, yeah, they're basically Sith. They actually think that the restraint of passion, the restraint of their intellect, the restraint of their ambition is actually oppression. And only fools listen to these systems that restrain the passion and enthusiasm and intelligence and political power of
Are you a fool, Conor?
Of individuals.
Do you buy that outlook?
What?
Do you buy that outlook?
I think the world. This is a great irony of Star Wars philosophy. You understand that the Jedi used to understand and worship both the dark side and the light side of the Force. It wasn't this binary between Sith and Jedi. They understood both sides.
Isn't that Legends
content?
What's that? That's not canon anymore. Disney. Is that Legends content or is that Disney?
It's probably Legends.
Yeah. Sounds like it's.
What does that do about the argument, though? Isn't like the Greek actually? So the ancient Greek actually thought that you were socially and intellectually R-slurred if you were incapable of exploring other human emotions besides like anger and lust. And they also thought you were like intellectually R-slurred if your only preoccupation was agriculture or war. And so my point is that like, I'm using Star Wars as an analogy, but you're asking me like,
yeah, but the Sith are the bad guys.
Are you Sith? It sounds like you're sympathetic to the Sith.
So I think
I'm saying like
this is a perversion.
The Sith have a point here, but they're dumb and larpy here. And
I think it's a perversion. I think that you're perverting George Lucas's vision. Bringing balance of the Force doesn't mean a balance of Sith and Jedi. It means defeating the Sith. The Sith are the perversion. That's how in the original. No, that's how George Lucas intended it. That how did Anakin bring balance? By defeating the Sith, not by numerically.
That's not even true in the Jungian meta narrative that he used as the basis and the hero of the Thousand Faces that he used in order to write Star Wars. It's not even true.
Well, I'm just telling you what George Lucas said.
Okay, well, I'm telling you, George Lucas, like many things, is very good at world building, but he's actually just an arsler. He's actually like an incredibly dense human being. So, when it comes to the Jungian meta-narrative, which George Lucas also used as the backdrop for Star Wars, is in Sam Witwer, whatever, the guy who plays like, he's the voice actor for Darth Maul, but he's also like a huge Star Wars nerd. He was the character model for Star Killer. That guy basically says like, no, I've talked to George Lucas, I've talked to Dave Filoni, this is how it always works, okay? So when the light side becomes too powerful, you can predict who's going to win next based off of what's happening in the narrative. So if you see the light side winning too much, guaranteed the dark side's going to come back and balance it out. Same thing with, the dark side's winning too much. The light side's going to come back and balance it out. And that's part of the Jungian narrative. And also, when it comes to the, you were saying the legends, which is no longer canon, I don't give a fuck. If it's good lore, it's good lore. The ancient lore was that you're effectively socially and intellectually R-slurred if you are not capable of taking aspects of the dark side of the Force and integrating into your personality. Like Jung calls this integrating your shadow. It's acknowledging the darker, more malicious, more self-serving, more animalistic impulses of the human condition, not allowing it to enslave you, not allowing it to dominate your life, but understanding that that's a part of you and not hating it and running away from it. Because if you hate it and run away from it, often what happens is the darkest part of you that you are ignoring and suppressing, it comes back in weird, fucked up ways. And by the way, I'll wrap up this rant. But if you look at conservatives who are overly anti-promiscuity, overly anti-homophobe or homosexual, overly anti-drug, overly anti-whatever, Oftentimes, what do we discover about these people in the long term? They're secret drug addicts. They're secret homosexuals. They're secret sexual degenerates because they're suppressing the dark parts of themselves, and then it comes back in a more aggressive way.
Do you view homosexuality as sexual degeneracy?
No, not necessarily. I would say that promiscuity, this is actually a conversation I had with Mr. Girl. It's not homosexuality like boys kissing boys and girls kissing girls that I view as degenerate. That's fine. It's the promiscuity that correlates with being a sexual subculture of the Western world.
I'm not sure I followed that, but okay.
Okay, so hold on. I'll make it really simple for you. Boy kissing boy, is that bad?
No, I think it's beautiful.
Okay, so boy having unprotected sex with 30 men who all are not wearing condoms within 12 hours. Is that bad?
I think it's unsafe.
While high on hard drugs.
I think it's unsafe and therefore bad.
Okay, we agree.
Yeah, but in virtue of its unsafeness, not in virtue of its quote unquote degeneracy, I think. Or
sure, but that's where you and I don't agree. So I've probably told you this before. Do you understand like the historical understanding of the word degenerate?
No.
Okay. So generate, make, generate, often associated with life, degenerate, fall apart, entropy, all that kind of stuff. And so in the 19th century, when they were selling tonics and opium and cocaine and all that kind of stuff through your local magazine in the late 19th, early 20th century, what they were doing is they were saying, take this tonic. It will generate you. It will give you life. It's this elixir that will make you amazing. And the reason why they called like addiction or promiscuity degenerate is because probably, you guys aren't going to agree with me because you're all fucking liberals, but it's okay. They correlated promiscuity and addiction with degeneration. And so if you look at meth addicts, if you look at heroin addicts, if you look at alcoholics, if you look at promiscuous people, their physical health, their social health, their ambitions, when they become enslaved by these exterior forces, they degenerate. So when you're degenerate, look at whether or not it's good for you on a personal level. If it's good for you, keep doing it. If it's bad for you, it's degenerate and it's going to hurt you.
Your worldview scares me more than Hasan.
That is fucking psychotic. That is an insane statement to make. You think simping for you think understanding the concept of degeneracy is worse than simping for the 20th century regimes that are like murderous and shitty? What the fuck? Why did you just say that?
No, not what you
We're going to pull that apart, by the way. I'm not letting that go.
Not just what you just said. It's like all of this. It's like all of it. It feels, I'm not telling you that like I could back it up with an argument right now. It just feels wrong to me. Like the things you're telling me it feels alien.
You're liberal. I'm conservative. You're evaluating things on whether or not there is exterior harm caused. I'm saying that the social institutions that we have created over centuries or millennia have wisdom rooted within them. So even if there's stupid shit, like there is stupid shit, like who is it? Paul from the Bible. He says homosexuality is bad. No homosexuals, no boys. It's all bad. That's dumb. But if you look at the historical context of it, he was probably watching bisexual and homosexual promiscuous pagans engaging in promiscuity, catching diseases, having bad relationships with their family, and all the degeneracy, quote unquote, that was correlated with that. And so he came up with a dumb prescription. The dumb prescription is all of homosexuality is bad. I don't say all of homosexuality is bad. I say if you're attracted to boys, you're attracted to boys. Kiss boys, okay? If you feel like it.
Well, yeah, because a lot of these tech people are
unprotected sex with 30 men in 12 hours. That's dumb and degenerate, and it's going to hurt you.
It's just funny because like a lot of what you're now categorizing as degeneracy, or have always. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to claim that you're just inventing it now for the first time. So sorry if I came across that way. Elon Musk, you know, I like want to impregnate as many people as possible. Like, you have obviously,
he's a degenerate.
Yeah, so how are we confident? And they're all like, this is the Epsteinite class or Epstein class or whatever Ossoff said. Like, you are simping for the Epstein class.
Great quote, by the way.
Yeah. It doesn't seem like
it
seems like you're simping for the Epstein class, if not Epstein himself.
Do you think all rich and powerful people are virtueless degenerates?
No.
Okay. I mean, that's my point.
But the ones who are like sort of
for their
clustered
lack
here,
of virtue.
But the clustered ones here, like Thiel, Elon, Zuckerberg, Andreessen, all these people, these network stake people, these are all people who are, I feel like, even if it's not factually related to any criminality, spiritually related to the Epstein class.
Sure. Well, number one, I think you can harness bad people for good ends. As a matter of fact, I think that's just a existential truth. I don't view myself as I don't view myself as a good person. I view myself as a bad person who's doing as much good as I can. And I that's also like a pretty Christian perspective on the human condition. But can you name historically, later the better, but if you have a contemporary example, that would be fine. Can you name a historical figure that you admire that I would be familiar with?
A historical figure that I admire that you'd be familiar with. I admire Abraham Lincoln. I admire. Okay. Sorry.
No. Let's just work with Abraham Lincoln for a second.
Yeah.
So, are you aware of Abraham Lincoln's character flaws in reference to, and also his political flaws in reference to fighting for the Union?
Yes.
Okay. So right there could, and by the way, you could bring up other characters or whatever. But my point with you is, I could go through each one of the people that you admire, and I could say, look at all these flaws you are worshiping at the feet of and want to empower these flawed, evil people who have caused all of this harm in the world. But as Joe Biden says, don't compare me to the Almighty, compare me to the alternative, right? So you have to take the flaws of individuals as historical forces, and you have to decide whether or not the juice is worth the squeeze.
I see. Well, Conor, here's what I view of like the Hasan communist stuff. It doesn't work. The system doesn't work. It's been tried.
Yeah.
This shit it's a joke. It's a LARP. And maybe that's why I kind of don't view it as seriously. I think it's been discredited in the eyes of the American people. And I think it's just stupid bullshit.
Okay.
And people need to learn to pay their taxes. People need to learn to just get a job. And that's going to happen. And so I don't really view the worst of all possible worlds as particularly likely, but I think that you're empowering actually powerful people who are scary.
No, everybody's terrifying. Before we move to, I want to press you on Hasan and me being scarier than Hasan. Okay. I want to address something real quick for AI deregulation. Have you ever heard Peter Thiel argue why he wants tech deregulation?
I don't recall.
Okay. So there's a phenomenal conversation. I think it's incredibly transparent. I invite you in your chat to check it out. It's Ross Douthat, Douthat, interviewing Peter Thiel, and them talking about why Peter Thiel does what he does. Okay. And Peter Thiel talks about how JD Vance is a disappointment and he hasn't gotten enough out of his support of electoral politics. And as a result, he might not even associate with electoral politics anymore because the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. Mm-hmm. You can watch the video and see if you think it's a sincerely held belief or not.
Well, just to be clear, I think these people are raking in millions and millions and millions of dollars. I think that they're robbing us blind, and I think that this administration is letting them do it. I think I think we will never truly know the scope until we get a Democratic president to investigate this shit. We will never know the scope of the graft and just bullshittery that's happening right now that we don't even know about.
Sure.
I am
but you understand,
yeah.
You understand if it was just materialism, then not Ross Douthat, excuse me. Sorry for associating Ross. I think Ross Douthat is actually a moral person. For Peter Thiel and Elon Musk, it hasn't been about the money for a really long time. They have enough money that they could do whatever they wanted to do.
That concerns me. It feels like they want to make
for the rest of their lives.
I think you and I agree they want to make tech fiefdoms and to be able to just operate.
That's important, though. Well, yeah. So the nature of their fiefdom, let me articulate this real quick, and then I want to press you on Hasan.
Okay.
So Peter Thiel, in his interview with Ross Douthat, I invite you to check it out on your own time. Basically, Peter Thiel says that he's looking at technology that's happened since the agricultural revolution and the industrial revolution. And what's happened was we had a huge burst with the agricultural revolution, where all these new agricultural, like basically 3,000 years ago, all these agricultural technologies came out that helped us harness the planet for our own benefit. And that was like a huge tech boom that stagnated for around 1,800 years. And then in the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century, we had the Industrial Revolution, which also birthed as a micro birth, the Information Revolution. And so there were almost what we thought was an unending horizon of technological progress. Construction materials, oil as a product, energy industry, automobiles, airplanes, name it. And there was like an endless frontier that technology was going to revolutionize. But what he sees and what scares him for the human species, according to his interview, is that there is a funnel of technological progress where we've developed so many parallel industries, what seems like to the maximal ability that humans are capable of, that we have now, these technologies are mature. Commercial air flight is mature. Automobiles are mature. Agriculture is mature. And so the innovation that makes the species like vibrant and makes the species vital is slowing down. And he fears a future in humanity where technology is so stagnant that effectively like we live and die exactly the same way, the way that generations of medieval people did, our ancestors, or the pre-agricultural revolution humans, the way that they lived and died was the same way their ancestors lived and died, arguably for hundreds of thousands of years, because that's how old we are as a species. Mm-hmm. So with this technological and existential anxiety, he thinks that there's a funnel and AI might be the key to ripping open the next generation of technological progress for humanity. So AI is so capable, or hopefully, ideally, would be so capable of coming up with new technologies, of developing said technologies, of maximizing said technologies, effectively making a human brain that's smarter than the smartest humans, and then giving it unlimited information for development. That is the key to breaking open this funnel for the next generation of human technological and sociological development, and he wants to be the guy that does it. Okay, so he's using, I'll wrap up in a second and just let you engage with that. Mm-hmm. He's using Palantir and Anduril and all of these companies that he's in as military industrial complex technologies that the government is subsidizing his project. But his long-term project is trying to rip open human potential via artificial intelligence generation. So anyways, I'll let you deal with that first, because that's a lot of info.
Yeah, it kind of feels like I'm being sold something. I feel like that pitch is like
So, aren't you sold shit every day? Didn't you eat breakfast today? Didn't you have to buy your breakfast or your caffeinated beverage? What is being sold something? Why does that make it automatically worthy of derision or criticism?
I don't think it automatically does. I'm just telling you my feelings when I hear that. My feeling is that it doesn't get to the heart of my fear. It could be the case that AI is the next breakthrough. It's the funnel. It's the stopgap before we get the explosion of whatever we need. You know, I could even grant that that's the case. What I know is I want whoever's in charge of those AIs to be accountable to something other than these alien desires and these tech kings who do not have our best interest in heart and would sooner see us be like fuel, Matrix style. That's what I don't understand. Why you think that you can control these people by cozying up to them as opposed to, being hard on them. I want a government that keeps them constrained.
Yeah. So number one, I do too. Number two, though, I want to say, so you use the Matrix as this analogy, okay? Are you and I, and the Matrix is effectively a energy system, right? Human beings are the batteries. They generate like bioelectrical energy. They're in these little like pods of organic material. And then the Matrix, the race of robots use them as batteries as an energy source. Okay, so that's the analogy of the Matrix. And so it's supposed to be this like techno oppressive analogy for being enslaved to the human race, or not even the human race, but being enslaved by capitalism. Let's be real, they're probably leftists. And so the only way that you can achieve emancipation is by looking at the world as it is, dark and ugly and fucked up, and then trying to break free from the system that has enslaved you. Okay, so that's the Matrix. Do you and I exchange energy right now?
This is going to be annoying. I think yes, but it depends what you mean.
Okay. Does our chat exchange energy with us? Do they give us their time, attention, and money and ability to create content?
Yes.
You're in the system, bitch. It's called society. Okay? Being socially responsible to other people, being accountable to other individuals, that's just called society. So this
that's
like
just an equivocation. That's just an equivocation. I didn't mean,
it's not at all.
Well, I'm telling you what I meant when I said they would use us as batteries. I meant literally, like they would sooner see us enslaved and like used for like our bio heat signatures. I didn't mean it in the kind of we're all connected because we're all star particles.
I think that you have an incredibly cynical view of, and by the way, the reason why I'm cynical about these people is because I still think they're libertarian college kids who got way too much money. They just happened to age another 3 decades, and they read Ayn Rand once, and they think that that's just the way the world should be. And they're R-slurred, very R-slurred. That's why I don't like them. That's why I think they're stupid. That's why I think their power needs to be checked. You are subscribing because you effectively at the beginning of this conversation asked me, why give power to these vampires?
Yeah.
That's not what you said, but that was the thing of what you said.
I kind of view them as like
you have an
Strahd von Zarevich, or like I kind of view them as the 9 lords of hell.
Sure, but you could watch these interviews and understand these people in their own words and their own visions. And they're like Elon Musk doesn't go, oh yeah, like I totally disregard the dignity of humanity. I think all these people are plebiscites that I should harness for my Matrix program. No, he's talking about exploring the stars and the existence of a multiplanetary species and the threats of the galaxy, and how he wants to achieve.
And you've fallen in love, Connor.
This goal, this dream.
You're enamored by that vision. You're enamored by it, and I think that
I share it.
You've been charmed. I think you've been charmed.
So you think that he doesn't believe his own words?
Depends on which they are. I think he's a delusional person.
So you're saying that you're saying that Starship,
he's a liar. He is a liar. He's a knowing liar on a lot of stuff. Whether it comes to his companies, but how well they're doing.
Do you think if he could snap his fingers? I would say he's a liar and a failure. Okay, because he hasn't delivered on the products that he's delivered, despite Tesla being one of the largest available readily usable electric vehicles ever produced, like one of the largest mass-produced electric vehicles, despite the fact that parallel companies, not Tesla itself, but Waymo has a better, auto driving system that might be taken to truck export eventually. that we actually do have a starship that is capable of lifting 300,000 pounds and traveling 17,000 kilometers an hour, and it's capable of easily landing and being refueled. These are all amazing technological developments, but you're saying what he said and what he's able to achieve are different. Therefore, he's not telling the truth about his ambitions, which doesn't follow at all.
I think that he has some very delusional ambitions. I do think that's probably true. I do think he's a liar and he doesn't care about people. He doesn't care about anyone but himself. I think he's a narcissist. I think these people are disgusting scum.
Okay. Do people have to be good people in order to develop the technologies that advance human beings?
No, but I just don't think that we should.
Like, do you need Einstein, or do you need the guy who developed the atom bomb? I forget what his name is. But do you need them to be like fundamentally good and moral people in order to harness their technology?
No, but I don't want to empower them by having their minions in charge of the government. That's what I'm saying. I mean, I'm not making much progress this way, so I guess I want to approach a different way. What's your number one issue in the 2028 election? What do you care most about in a candidate?
Probably that the gap that seems to be radicalizing most Americans, that I think stems from the material conditions, actually be addressed. So what?
Pretty broad. Can you narrow it a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Give me a second. Although you're probably going to say this is too broad. I can make it more specific after I probably say it too broad. But rapid demographic change, existential technological shifts, the dissolution of the social fabric, and wealth inequality, I think, are the things that are radicalizing our population. And we need a competent and intelligent leader who is not only aware of those problems as being like what's motivating radicalism in our country, but somebody who actually has proposals. So if it was an abundance lib like Gavin Newsom proposing new infrastructure for the United States in order to usher in the next generation of American innovation and development, I would vote for Gavin Newsom. And then I know that I would want to address your fear about JD Vance before I say,
because you are considering him, and as between him and, like, I don't even fucking know. Let me just think of someone. Raphael Warnock. As between him, let's think of another person. Josh Shapiro. It sounds like he would be a contender there.
Yeah, we should probably talk about, because once again, like, normie, centrist Dem, mixed economy capitalist who forgets about the topic of gun control, I can easily check that box. Socialist who pals around with Hasan Piker or is a social democrat, like Bernie. Let's say Bernie Sanders was running against JD Vance. I'd probably vote for JD Vance. Let's say AOC is running against JD Vance. I'm probably voting for JD Vance. Let's say Gavin Newsom is running against JD Vance. I'm voting for Gavin Newsom. So you asking me for a commitment before we even get there is not possible. And if you want that contention to make sense, we'd probably have to go back to the Hasan topic.
No, I think that I'm gathering some of your worldview, and I want to admit that I was wrong. I thought that you were an embarrassed Democrat, and I think that was wrong. And I just wanted to tell you that.
Well, I appreciate that, because, you know, I risked angering and losing my chat for the past 2 to 3 weeks in order to describe the legal analysis of ICE shootings and military intervention and all that. I risked my audience in order to speak the truth as I see it. And so I think a lot of liberals in my chat realize that I am different than them. And I've been saying it for years, but they didn't believe me because I said, oh yeah, we both agree that Trump is an existential shitty threat to the Republic of the United States, and I care about the Republic of the United States. So they're like, oh, you're just a liberal because every Republican has forgotten that we care about a republic. But they didn't realize.
I don't think that you're a Republican in the more traditional sense, though, because I think that you advocate
traditional though.
Reaganite. I don't think you're a Reaganite Republican. I don't think you're a
Reagan. Well, I think Reagan was a mistake. I think Reagan, the neoconservative elements of Reaganism actually having balls and being anti-communist, I'm totally down with that. But the level of deregulation that Reagan ushered in and its continuance for the past 3 to 5 decades the Reaganite philosophy infecting politics to the point that like endless neoliberal deregulation and free trade and
I'm so
endless
lost.
neoconservative military. What's that?
I'm so lost. It sounds like you're.
Why?
It sounds like you are skeptical of capitalism. You're skeptical of socialism. It's
really a monster. It's a dragon you have to ride. It's a beast. You can't let it do whatever it wants, or else it eats you. But you have to ride it.
Okay. It sounds like you're straight up a bit of a fascisty, gripery, techie guy.
Okay. Let's go to socialism as a comparison, because this is actually, it was a frustrating part of your commentary that actually, got me miffed a little bit. And I think it'll illustrate some of what we're talking about. So, are you familiar with the history of early and mid-century communist China and or the Soviet Union?
I dabble. That's all I'll say. I'm not an expert at all.
Okay, I would strongly recommend analyzing this history. Wikipedia, random movies like Chernobyl, comedies.
They're horrible. Here's what I'll grant you. Like, they're horrible regimes. They don't, in my opinion, the systems have been discredited to the extent that China has emerged as a global power. It hasn't been as a kind of command economy type situation. And I think that in general, these projects have ended in abysmal failures. And attended to them were all sorts of what I think are rights deprivations and yeah.
But this is where like historical illiteracy is going to make it so there's like a huge gulf between us. Okay. Because China, to me, modern China, is the natural emanation of socialist ideology and communist ideology, because it reverted to state capitalism. So communism. So hold on. Number one, I'm going to put these three things down or real quick to you. Okay. So in the 19th century, socialism, there were pre-Marxian socialist philosophies. And what they were trying to do is they were living in the Industrial Revolution, and they were saying there's something wrong with capitalism. We're generating so much wealth, and yet the average person is still a peasant. This is fucking miserable. We must free the working class and all of humanity from the oppressions of capitalism. That's socialism in general. Pre-Marxian socialism, post-Marxian socialism, Marxian socialism, they all share the desire to emancipate humanity from the oppressions of capitalism. Okay? Now, Marxist socialism, which by far was the most popular one, says that decommodifying basic human needs and workers owning the means of the production is the way that you achieve this emancipation. And then ultimately, the end goal should be establishing a moneyless, stateless, classless society of egalitarianism. Okay, and they in their own writings, they've used socialism and communism interchangeably, but over analyzing this work, we've kind of used communism as like the end state and socialism as a stepping stone. That's kind of the way that most people use it. Okay, now
why do you do these itself, can I interrupt real quick? You do these like kind of like etymological historical analyses before, as we're having a conversation. It can make it frustrating to, exchange ideas.
If you were paying attention, this shouldn't be frustrating at all. This should actually be fascinating.
Okay, fascinating me.
Because this is why Hasan is dangerous.
Well, I didn't grant that he's not dangerous in his ideology. I just don't think that he himself, that ideology presents a threat in the United States right now.
Okay.
I also don't know why you're against China. China seems like totally compatible with the kind of system that you're advocating for. I don't know. It seems
weirdly enough, we could get to that. So the reason why I don't like what you just did rhetorically, and I'm sure it's not on purpose, but the reason why I don't like it is that you're saying for the basis of this conversation, I just need to acknowledge that techno-feudal freaks who I might align with halfway on some descriptive issues are more of a threat than Hasan Piker, which is true. You're totally right.
What I was trying to say was I'm more scared of them than Hasan. And I was describing a feeling. Like,
you should be. They're more dangerous and more effective than Hasan Piker. That's fundamentally true.
You seem like nonplussed, and so I'm wondering why you're nonplussed.
Because what I don't like about your content, what I don't like about Live and Learn, what I don't like about a lot of progressives, including Soy Pill.
You don't like Soy Pill?
No, I like Soy Pill as a guy. As a matter of fact, I have to commend him for the way that he treats his body. I think the way that he lifts and eats and all that kind of stuff, he should be an example to the unwashed lefty masses of how to conduct yourself. So no, I actually like Soy Pill on an individual level.
You like him on the individual level of his body.
Yeah. Yes. But it's what his body says about him. No homo. So, but the reason why I get frustrated with what you did rhetorically is that I think that in order to understand why most right-wingers don't understand shit about socialism or leftism or communism or any of that shit. They haven't studied it or engaged with the material to the same degree that I have. But if you want to understand the borderline existential fear that Americans experience when they have like the Cold War as a generational trauma or memory, then you have to understand this history. You have to understand the ideology that was birthed in the middle 19th century. You have to understand how it revolutionized Europe in the early 20th. You have to understand the dystopian police states and authoritarian nightmares that it ushered into the middle 20th century. And you have to understand how this idea continues to limp on into the modern zeitgeist and how it still poses a threat. And if you're not interested in that, that's totally fine. We don't have to talk about it, but I'm going to talk about it to my chat immediately afterwards because it's what I care about.
No, I'm just saying, like, I understand that you need a great deal of context to understand anything really fully. And I think that what I'm raising as an objection is to the flow of the conversation and to the extent that the historical whatever is, needed in a particular instance. I think it can be sort of raised more naturally. So essentially for this purpose, right? Like, I'm willing to grant that these regimes are horrible and horrific, and I'm not a fan of the USSR as it existed. It predates me a little bit. I'm not a fan of Beijing. I'm not a fan of communism. I'm not a communist. I'm not a socialist. I just don't understand.
Okay, but do you understand the underlying motivations that you have even posed? That you've said this to me repeatedly in this conversation. You sound like a groyper. You sound like a dissident right-wing freak. You sound like a techno-feudalist.
I have that stuff. Okay. Yeah, I've said that. Yeah.
Okay. So progressives and some liberals who are sympathetic to progressives and people who are sympathetic to DEI, CRT, social democratic societies in Scandinavia, and socialist and communist regimes of the 20th century, oftentimes they have rhetoric that spans the political gamut, and they also have similar motivations. And so the fear is that in ignorance of this history and in ignorance of this philosophy, you guys are effectively useful idiots for far leftist freaks. That's actually the thrust of it.
You can say that, but I can just tell you, I think that their plans suck. We're not gonna let these tankies be the president, and to the extent that, like, we're just doing, a social encounter with some of these people, it's on no different terms than you might have a social encounter with someone who has horrible views on the right or indeed the left. I think the difference is that you're expressing some ideological sympathy with those people, whereas I'm not.
But I don't agree with you. I think you are expressing ideological sympathy. I think your desire to socialize, which can be good and can be bad, to regulate, which can be good and can be bad, to use state power to check industry, which can be good and can be bad. If you do so in ignorance, you can be the Trojan horse for these nefarious ideologues. And this is what frustrates me. So in the middle 2010s to late 2010s, there was an entire left-wing social media movement to say that the contrarian right, the libertarian right, the I used to be a liberal, but that entire, like Dave Rubin, Tim Pool, all that kind of stuff, there was effectively a social media movement of right-wing ignorance that was playing into the propaganda of the far right, but they were still pretending that they were the moderate center.
Yeah, but they're grifters.
And okay, but hold on. But you were grabbing their audience and these creators by the shoulders and you were screaming into their face, hey, you are the useful idiots for the far right. And they're like, no, we're not. And then you're like, this is how fascism works. And they're like, you're alarmist. Everything's fascist to you. That's what's happening right now in this conversation.
Yeah, no, but it feels like people say that. But did you hear Fuentes on the Super Bowl show where he was like, they're making overtures to white people? Did you hear that analysis? I don't know if you saw that. It was...
I haven't, but on the docket tomorrow was his Epstein analysis. So maybe, and somebody said that
it just feels like this CRT shit and this Red Scare stuff is it's anachronistic. The Red Scare stuff, okay, he said
what's
anachronistic.
I've heard the word. I don't know what it means. Can you tell me what it is?
The wrong era. It's misapplying a concept or a fear in outside of its proper historical context and in a place where it doesn't fit.
See, but this is my frustration with this conversation. We could have been done with probably within the past 5 minutes. We could have been done with the descriptions of the ideologies, how they manifested in the early 20th century, how they manifested in the late 20th century, how they're being carried into modern China, why that's still a threat, why Hasan Piker simping for modern authoritarian China is a uniquely repulsive political analysis that is similar to Nick Fuentes simping for Nazi Germany and for Joseph Stalin. We could have done all that and you could have understood my perspective, but instead you're saying that I am outside of time and place, and my anger and philosophical and political analysis is just Red Scare nonsense. It doesn't apply to the modern era, which I'm telling you, I'm not the ignorant party. You are the ignorant party. You are the one who doesn't understand.
So let's tackle that. So it's my contention that Marxist-Leninism and communism, as it was practiced in the Soviet Union, has been discredited, and that by and large, it is not a threat globally or internally, especially internally. It's my position that America has never really had much of a threat internally with respect to communist ideological infiltration, save for some espionage incidents. There was espionage, no doubt. That happens between states as a matter of course. But in general, it's not my belief that we are in any danger of a communist takeover in that sense. But you think that that's not the case? You think that that's... Yeah, go.
Yeah. Yes. So, okay. So there were socialist and communist revolutions in the early 20th century amongst a variety of societies. And there was I'll try to address the global stage simultaneous to the cultural stage. It's going to be tough, but I'll try to thread the needle. And I'll try to be quick as well. I'll try to speak quickly. But I would really appreciate it if you and your audience tried to absorb the information that I'm conveying.
We will do our best.
So, in the early 20th century, there were revolutions, socialist and communist revolutions, but they didn't occur in capitalist societies as predicted by Marx himself. They occurred in feudal societies like Japan, or not Japan, like China. I need to slow down so I'm actually accurate. Like China and like Russia. And so a gentleman by the name of Gramsci said, why is it that socialist and communist revolutions occurred in feudal societies, but they did not occur in capitalist societies? And what he realized is that the military industrial complex, the police state, culture, the politics, all that kind of stuff, these were counterweights against the socialist revolution. And so actually, arguably in the United States, I don't think he brought up this specific example, but FDR was actually an anti-communist and an anti-socialist because he created a welfare state that still was harnessed to the mixed economy capitalist system, but it placated the masses. It soothed
I heard he was sympathetic.
Revolutionary sentiment.
I just want to pause right there. I heard that FDR was sympathetic to Joseph Stalin. People make the argument that he was a fellow traveler. You reject that?
I don't know. He actually, weirdly enough, you have to come up. So you kind of have to come up. This is why the descriptions are so accurate. You need to decide whether or not you think a moneyless, stateless, classless society is the end point of human civilization. Yes or no. That's going to determine whether or not you're a communist. So actually, let me go ahead and just ask you. Do you think that in an ideal world, let's say we conquered all of the frailties of the human condition, do you think that we should live in a moneyless, stateless, classless society as like the end point of human existence?
With idealness embedded into it?
Yeah.
I think idealness would imply a stateless society. I'm not sure that it would imply a classless one. But I do think that the state is inherently, inefficient. And so I think idealism almost presupposes.
Okay, remove idealism. Do you think that it would be the preferred state of like the natural human endpoint of our civilization should be to live in a moneyless, stateless, classless society?
I just don't know what you mean by natural endpoint.
Okay. We've evolved as a species, both physically and culturally over millennia, right?
Yes.
Okay. And we live on a planet together that has communications that allow us to communicate with any person on the planet, yes?
More or less, yes.
Okay. And money is a way that we track our transactions on a day-to-day basis, right?
Yeah, among other things, but yes.
Okay. And states are governments that are effectively our peers, not our peers, but they're also our superiors who wield power over humanity, yes?
They wield power over humanity, yes.
Okay. And we have classes, namely the bourgeois and the proletariat. The bourgeois are the people who own industry and disproportionately profit from said industry. And the proletariat are the working schlubs who make industry turn.
I'm not sure if that's correct according to theory, but I'm accepting your framework of it, sure.
Okay. So if we could advance as a species another 10,000 years, should we be able to create such abundant wealth that you don't need money? You just walk into a grocery store, you pick an apple off of a shelf, you don't have to pay anybody, you just walk out and eat it. And you can do that with all commodities, okay? All commodities are consumable without paying a dime to anyone, okay? Then stateless. Should there be a governing body that's in charge of you where if they decide that you're out of line, they're able to incarcerate you or use force in order to compel you to
let me just get to the end there. No, because we're operating in idealism, I think that there's going to need to be some sort of monopoly on violence such to work out the differences between people that might come to pass.
Okay, arguably you're not a communist then, because you think that even at the end point of humanity, we will probably need some form of state
to manage conflicts between people, assuming lack of ideal conditions. But of course.
Okay. And then the only other thing that I want to hit on, just because I think it actually fulfills the definition, I understand this is kind of dry for a lot of people, but I don't care because it's actually important.
Okay.
In an ideal world, I keep using ideal, but at the end point, 10,000 years from now, do you think that human beings, you and I, whenever we enter into an entrepreneurial venture, should we effectively work as collaborative peers who have the same rights and autonomy within the institution? Or do you think that we need to maintain the hierarchy of bosses and owners in order to create and perpetuate institutions? Do we need the separation between bosses and workers?
I believe in rights, unless they're really socially not useful. And so I think that there, because I believe in rights, I think one such right is the right to own certain levels of property. And I think that
okay, you're not a communist. We've arrived at the answer. You're not a communist. You think that moneylessness is interesting, but you don't have a preference on it. Statelessness seems kind of utopian, and then also it seems like you're skeptical about the prohibition of classes as well. Okay, so you're not a communist. So let's move to Marxian socialist. Okay, decommodification of basic human needs. Should every single human being be provided food, water, and shelter without cost to themselves as a moral good for our species?
Depends. All these are going to be, it depends.
I'm going to put you down as a half socialist there for the first half.
No,
Let's
I mean,
do the second half.
If it really is, such a existence of abundance that it's all of these things are just trivially easy to produce, and everyone would be in favor of that, right? Like if it were so easy, if it were just really that easy to provide, I can't imagine you wouldn't want the government to guarantee it. And I just don't see how this gets to our.
So the reason why is I don't want that until we have a race of slave robots, Boston Dynamics autonomous robots, who are capable of replacing human labor.
I guess I don't have clarity on what level of idealness then we're talking about. It's like some amount of like very like abundance, but not enough that there's robots, and not enough that you can't just make sure that there's no more human strife. Like I don't know what we're operating in. I don't know how it relates to our underlying dispute, which
it's okay. I'll just put you down as a quarter socialist. We're making progress. It might not seem like we're making progress from your end. Aren't you?
Aren't you? On that view, aren't you?
Only once we get a slave race of robots. So once we get a slave, which by the way involves getting the techno-feudal lords to mine the asteroid belt for rare earth minerals that's necessary to produce a Boston Dynamics robots at scale, to the point that Boston Dynamics robots are able to replace human labor.
I'm going to be honest. I'm going to put a flag in the play. I am lost, Connor. I don't know where we are.
Well, I'm not.
I'm with you on the journey, but I'm just telling you that I need help. I'm out here. I'm on the. I don't know which.
It's totally fine. All that's happened is, imagine I'm a therapist, but I'm trying to figure out I'm McCarthy. Okay, I'm in the Red Scare. I'm trying to figure out whether or not you're a communist or a socialist. Right now, you are not you're not a communist. Excuse me. And you have if there was a socialist scale, you are 25% socialist.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to decide whether or not we execute you at the end of this. Okay.
Okay.
So the decommodification of basic human need, we just covered that. You said if we could, we should. Okay, you're a quarter communist. Now, workers owning
decommodification. Wait. So yeah, if it's easy to do, why not? As for basic needs, isn't that what you said?
I'm not making a moral. I know the McCarthy thing probably implies like a moral judgment, but I'm not. We're also just being descriptive. So you could I don't have the capacity to actually incarcerate you for being a socialist or a communist. I hope you know that. So
I'm aware.
Being a quarter socialist is not going to result in your incarceration. But I want to figure out the other half of the calculation. Okay. So let's say that you're dictator of America. You don't have to worry about the Republican limits or the capitalist limit. You don't have to worry about anything. Would you think that you should change the economic model of the United States so that all workers have stock in the institutions they work for?
No.
So let's say that you start, okay, you already answered the answer, which is great because that just means that you're a quarter socialist, not a full, not like a 3/4 socialist. But I just want to illustrate the idea just in case, okay? So let's say that you go work at a grocery store and there's 100 employees, or let's just keep it simple, 10 employees. When you join said institution, you get a 10% stock. When the business does better, you get a profit share, you get a vote on changes to the business, et cetera, and that is state enforced. So you are not capable of making a private venture where there's one boss and there's employees without stock benefits. The state will say, pointing gun to your head, if you work here, you have a stake in the company and you get to vote on how that company carries out its duties. And I think you said no.
Yeah, I believe... but that's just in virtue of my belief that people should have rights with respect to property and making businesses, unless you can show that there's some overwhelming social cost to it, which I think there are for certain market failures. And so there are some markets that I would make illegal. For example, the market in slaves.
Okay. You are, congratulations. You are not a communist. You are 25% a socialist.
Oh.
Okay.
Now, what does that have to do with anything?
This has to deal with whether or not you're a fellow traveler or useful idiot for communists or socialists.
I thought we were talking about FDR.
I mean, we still are, because we just say that FDR is viewed by communists and socialists as a
Some
traitor
people,
to the cause because he ushered in the material conditions that prevented socialism and communism from coming about.
I've
Whereas
heard the
other people
opposite.
view him as a
Yes.
fellow traveler as socialists.
Yeah.
We're still on topic, bud. Just because you're not tracking doesn't mean that we're not on topic.
Well, I don't even know what the topic is at this point.
Number one, I'm trying to figure out how much of a socialist and a communist you are. Number two,
so we are
now I'm going to try to illustrate how socialism and communism has like infected the last 100 years of the Western zeitgeist.
I remember. Okay, you're trying to explain to me why communism remains a threat internally in the United States. Yeah, that's where we're at. Got it.
Communism probably not so much, but socialism absolutely.
Okay.
So let's talk about this real quick. So with Gramsci, and by the way, I'll try to be brief. I know I'm not brief, but give me a second, okay? Gramsci said, why do feudal societies become socialist or communist? Why isn't this happening in capitalist societies? And it's because of what I mentioned before. Law enforcement, military, churches, families, pop culture, all that bullshit. Those are counter-revolutionary forces. Those are forces that basically make the socialist revolution impossible, which is why it happened in feudal societies. Well, with feudal societies, I should probably keep going with Gramsci. Yeah, I'll go with Gramsci, and then I'll return to the actual socialist societies as practiced. So with Gramsci, he said that what's actually necessary is a cultural revolution. We need to bring down the defenses of capitalism and mixed economy capitalism first. And the way that we do that is we create art, we create social discourse, we create cultural, progress. Like, by the way, CRT, critical race theory, is actually a grand baby of Gramsci. There was a guy named, I want to say it's Marcuse. Marcuse in the 60s and 70s was a guy who studied Gramsci, and he was like a popular German philosopher or some shit. I don't fucking know. He was a college professor in California, and Marcuse basically was the guy who started, CRT that then became CRT. But Marcuse was an unapologetic socialist who was actually ejected from the country by Ronald Reagan. And so Marcuse said, not just Marcuse, but his contemporaries, they said, why don't we take the proletarian bourgeois analysis of Marxism and why don't we apply it to social institutions? So, as an example, what's going to happen in the Marxist view of the world is the proletarian masses are going to become so dissatisfied with capitalism that eventually they're going to overthrow the bourgeois. They're going to ban that class, and we're actually going to have a truly egalitarian society. Well, if we look at America and if we look at the Western world, then white supremacy is bourgeois. That's the bourgeois analog within social affairs. It's better to be white. You're richer as a white person. You have more social privilege. The Hispanics are like swarthy barbarians. The black people are criminal savages. The Asians are like smelly backwards, blah, 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 right? Like white supremacy is the philosophy that is bourgeois from a cultural analog. So the masses, both the people who are oppressed by white supremacy, but also the people who are part of white supremacy, they need to have their consciousness reoriented to the point that they agree that white supremacy needs to be abolished. And so if you look at
we'll give you the floor. Just all the communists and lefties in my chat are screaming that you're butchering it. I'm not saying you are, because I don't know, but I'm just letting you know that that's what they're saying.
Even if they think I'm butchering it, it's a decent enough summary that like you can still see the patterns of what's going on, because white supremacy can be bad. Like, we can agree that white supremacy is bad, that a race should not be supreme above other races. We can agree that like racism towards oppressed groups is not good, and therefore we should reform as a society. But the liberal push for this revolution or whatever, or the liberal push for a more just society, is saying we're individuals. We have individual rights. We have individual sovereignty. We have individual dignity. And therefore, we must extend the benefits of liberal society to all people, regardless of what they look like, where they come from, what language they speak. Okay. That is a liberal version of eliminating white supremacy. Whereas a leftist version says, well, that's not enough. Because what you've done is you've taken the privileges of white supremacy and the privileges of capitalism, and you've extended it to the maximal amount of people within the United States. But even if we created a liberal anti-racist society where everybody was extended dignity and nobody treated each other poorly based off of their country of origin or race or whatever, we still participate in a economy that disproportionately profits off of black and brown suffering. You've probably heard Hasan Piker and other leftists use the term global south or imperial core. I saw you be confused by the term imperial core.
Yeah,
so you as a Hispanic person, I could give you all of the benefits of white supremacy. You could walk around not caring about your race. Everybody could treat you well. Everybody could say, good morning, Mr. Pisco. Excellent day today. You know, they could give you a high credit score. You could be nominally, not even nominally. What do they call it? You could be honorary white, but you still benefit from an economic system that disproportionately fucks over black and brown people. Therefore, you're participating in a racist system. Okay. So go ahead if you have a question.
No, I just don't know how it relates to, okay. So, I'm going to accept your framing of the theory just for purpose, because I don't fucking know Marxist theory. People in my chat, I'm telling you, Connor, they are losing their minds the way I've not seen them before. But putting that aside,
good.
What is it?
And by the way, half of these R slurs in your chat, if they came on fucking stream to debate it, they would just piss their pants.
Oh, yeah.
They would be like, oh, I read Marcuse and he said this, but it would be totally irrelevant to the thrust of what I'm saying.
Okay. Well, I just don't know how it relates to the claim of danger. Whatever you're talking about, that's not what people in the Democratic Party are thinking about.
Yes, it is. 100% it is. You haven't seen this rhetoric omnipresent in the cultural zeitgeist for the past 20 years?
Racism?
Anti-racism.
So white privilege and that shit?
Yes.
What does that have to do with China and Soviet Union?
Great question. So what I would say is that you're assuming that I'm taking a moral perspective on this, whereas I think I'm just being descriptive. It takes the same formula of oppressor oppressed. It takes the same formula of class abolition, and it applies it to social affairs. Okay. Arguably, feminism is the same thing. And there's different schools of feminism. There's liberal feminism, which says, take all the privileges of being male, give it to women. And then there's abolitionist feminism, which says, no, that's not enough. We need to abolish the category of man and woman and male and female because they come with all these oppressions in their nature of categorization. And pretending and here's the other thing that kind of frustrates me with you pretending I'm just speaking gibberish to you.
I'm not saying you're speaking
Vosh
gibberish.
Talks like this. Progressives talk like this. Liberals who don't know where these ideas emanate from they talk like this, like they're describing air, like they're describing the state of nature.
Yeah, just the way that I view the most left-wing people in the Democratic Party express themselves is on terms that are familiar, I think, to most Americans. It's certain policies, it's certain theories of the relationship between the state and the people. And it's things like Medicare for all. It's things like child care, child tax credit stuff. It's it's these New Deal stuff.
Is healthcare a basic human need? Is healthcare a basic human need?
Yeah.
So isn't making it universal a push towards decommodification? I'm not making a moral judgment. I'm just asking if that pushes in a leftward direction.
I guess I need to ask you what you mean by decommodification.
So decommodification. So commodity, as far as I understand it, is a consumable, tradable item or service within an economy. Okay. So basically yeah, go ahead.
If that's what a commodity is, then it depends who you talk to. There are some people who want, I guess, the decommodification of health insurance markets, not necessarily healthcare. There's some people who want, broader universal healthcare. There's some people who want public options, so that means it runs the gamut. But I mean, that would be true, presumably, of like, I don't know, any kind of even for example, like the NHS. There's like parallel private public systems, and I guess I don't know if that would fit.
I think we can agree. I think we can agree that the right wing and the capitalists of our society favor deregulation and treating healthcare as a commodity. And if you're broke, who gives a fuck? Good luck. Right? That's kind of their attitude towards healthcare.
Yeah, it just feels like how much.
I'm not making a moral judgment.
It just feels like how much, not if. Well, and to the extent that the language is about, you shouldn't have, this shouldn't be private or whatever. I don't know that people are advocating like get rid of all private healthcare of any kind, or make it so that there's no secondary insurance market for healthcare or whatever. And so, like, I don't know if you consider the NHS in the UK to be decommodification of healthcare. Do you?
Well, I'm not even making a moral judgment, man.
I'm not asking moral judgment. Do you consider the NHS to have decommodified healthcare in the United Kingdom? Yes or no?
No, it's still a consumable commodity.
Okay, so then I mean, that would be a way more, I don't know, publicified version of healthcare than what is being promoted in this country, even by the most left-wing politicians, which is something approaching Medicare for all, which would still like presuppose private healthcare, private hospitals, and that's just not the case with NHS.
Sure. But the only thing that I'm trying to get you to identify is that the right wing, when it comes to healthcare, food, and water, and capitalists who sometimes can be left wing or liberal, capitalists say it's all a commodity. It's all a market. It's all consumable. And if you don't have the means to consume said service, tough shit, you're in a free economy. Whereas I would say left-wing folks, not even necessarily socialists or communists, they would view redistributing wealth in order to make a necessary asset more available. They would view that as moral and good, and they would push for that. And that's where Medicare for all
have been having for decades.
Obviously not.
These are policy conversations that exist within a liberal framework that have been. I don't view like this like march towards communism that we're seeing any more than like when Clinton was proposing universal healthcare in the 90s. Well, she's certainly not a communist.
Yeah, but this is something that's actually pretty easy though. Can you acknowledge that there are more like free market liberals and there are more socializing or social democratic liberals?
Yes, I can acknowledge that.
Okay, then of course what ends up happening is Destiny's like, in my opinion, like just a straight neoliberal. He basically like he wants the economy to keep or he wants the state to keep things fair so we don't have a revolution. But basically, if he doesn't deem it an essential good or service, then he basically says, fuck you, figure it out, right?
Okay.
Whereas I think that there are more progressive and more left-leaning people, like so for instance Kyle Kalinske, who say Medicare for all. Medicare for all is a just position, making sure that every single person has the health care that they need, regardless of class, station, race, whatever.
If it was put to a vote, I would vote for Medicare for all.
Well, there you go. But that's why I said you're a quarter socialist. You don't believe in the full decommodification of human needs. You just think it's a good idea if we're rich enough to do it. And then you also don't believe in workers owning the means of production. So I would say you're probably a social democrat, but you're also probably like a quarter socialist based off of definition.
Doobie, how am I not allowing Conor to connect the dots? This is Doobie. This is just like trying to explain it to the MAGA how the Republicans are the actual bad guys, but won't let you explain the party switch. Okay, so now Doobie wants you to have more of the floor. You will now explain what Doobie is saying.
I've already had a ton of floor.
No, wait. I want, because Doobie's saying Pisco's not letting Conor get to the key point where he will expose himself for something. So Doobie, why don't you explain what point I'm not letting Conor get to? So we're just gonna all wait.
Well,
no. We're all waiting for Doobie because I'm the one who's making the conversation impossible, and Conor's gonna finally expose himself. So Doobie, put into words exactly what it is I'm not letting him get to. You did say that. So, Doobie, how do you want the conversation to proceed? We're all waiting for you, Doobie. How would you like the conversation to proceed on your own terms?
Fat super chat, though.
Oh, is that not the real Doobie?
The way that you want the conversation to proceed.
Is that a doobie with a different doobie? No, it's you. That's you, isn't it? That's not the real doobie? Is that not the real doobie? Did I get one guide?
It happens.
That wasn't doobie. Doobie didn't say that. All right. I took a Claritin.
Oh, fuck it.
Claritin. All right.
Okay.
You know what? I just, I want to apologize to Doobie. Doobie, you can keep super chatting me. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, keep calling me a dumbass while sending me money for calling me a dumbass, right?
Was it a doppelganger? Anyways. I could have sworn it was Doobie. Was there a Scooby Doobie? Which Doobie was it? Sorry, Connor, you can continue. Different person?
Right.
Okay, my bad.
It's okay. Let's focus up, okay? So I've been descriptive so far, and I think that your lefties freaking out in chat, they're presuming that I'm making like a moral statement as to whether or not taking the Marxian analysis and applying it to social issues, whether or not that's good or bad. Weirdly enough, I think that there's some things in the progressive zeitgeist that are interesting. So, for instance, intersectionality. I know you're still looking at your chat, but I'm gonna keep talking anyway.
No, you can. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so for instance, like intersectionality, understanding that there are intersections between, like, let's say that we took all of our characteristics and we put them on an XY diagram, understanding that all of the people within a certain category are going to have shared experiences along this variable. And then understanding that all these people within this category are going to have experiences along this variable. And there's going to be intersections where, let's say, able-bodied straight white men have shared experiences around this thing, and more often than not, and let's say disabled Black women all have shared experiences around this thing, we can analyze the way that culture impacts us, and then we can make accommodations to make a healthier, more understanding society. That's cool. I understand intersectionality. I think it's brilliant.
I feel like we're in the weeds again. Okay, so liberalism has some cool ideas. Maybe even some socialist people have some good ideas.
That's a
liberal people, lefty people have good ideas sometimes. I feel like we're getting lost. We're getting lost right here.
You're lost. I'm not lost at all.
Isn't the whole question like, why are you considering voting for JD Vance? And it's like, well, it's because
that wasn't the question. No, the question is, how through your ignorance are you I'll be rude because you're not paying attention and you're still lost. How are you a useful cocksleeve for the far left? That was the question we were exploring for the past 30 or 40 minutes.
And like, when do I do things to sort of crypto sneak in the far left? When do I do that? I just don't understand.
By constantly working to not understand what I'm saying in reference to socialism, communism, the applications of Marcuse and Gramsci to modern social affairs, the way in which they've corrupted the modern American zeitgeist, and the ways in which these things are also normalizing terms like socialist or things like democratic socialist into the zeitgeist, that nefarious ideas can be reintegrated back into the left. So your claims of like ignorance or lostness is actually not helping in your argumentation.
This feels like boomer shit.
I'm a lost Oxley. No.
It feels like boomer shit because you're trying to avoid like the fucked up shit you said for the first part of this conversation. When I'm like, dude, this all seems like kind of
return to it if you want.
Weirdo sicko shit that you're talking about, and I'm like, now we're talking about Marxist theory and intersectionality and the way that they're trying to use the term socialist and, like, I don't know, whitewash the term socialist. It just feels like boomer shit. Like, where is the concrete, like, this is a danger. They will do X, Y, Z, and that's why I'm considering voting for JD Vance if you have a super progressive on the ticket.
Because useful idiots like you, who, when I try to describe the history of the 20th century, you get bored, you get tired, you get lost. You're not interested in hearing like the social evolutions of left-wing theory into modern social issues. You're not interested in the theory or the history of 20th century socialist regimes. You are a useful idiot, and I'm not going to reward your ignorance. So I can perfectly articulate.
I don't understand. How am I a useful idiot for these people, it's because I don't acknowledge your history is correct or something, or I don't acknowledge how the left has.
You haven't even paid attention to it. I've described like one half of what I wanted to tell you. You got bored 2 minutes into it. Then your chat freaked out, which you thought was interesting, and now you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Bitch, why don't you pay attention?
I'm trying to pay. You're describing the way in which some of these trends in leftist thought have circulated and rear their head in modern discourse, including through things that are familiar to us, such as CRT.
Making it clear, Hasan Piker.
Okay, what about him?
Hasan Piker sins for the CCP. The CCP and China are state capitalism. State capitalism is a step towards socialism. They still have authoritarian control over China. Hasan Piker and his useful cocksleeves, idiots, and Trojan horses are trying to repopularize the term socialism. They're trying to sanitize the reputation of nefarious authoritarian 20th century regimes. They're trying to vilify the American experiment of the 20th century. And they're trying to make it uniquely evil and therefore worthy of destruction. And through your ignorance, you mainstream their perspectives.
Wait a second. First of all, I don't like that he did this kind of tour. I didn't watch all the streams, but I saw him be like, "Oh, the book." I'm not a fan of simping for the Chinese regime. I'm not at all. Talk to your friend Elon, by the way. I'm going to say it one more time for you, Connor. Talk to your friend Elon, who are sluts for China. You agree that a lot of these people are sluts for China?
Yeah, capitalists have.
So it seems like you're
sold out their morals. That's part of my criticism.
Yeah. So like, are you any better? Because you're like trying to make a moral superior, like you think that Elon Musk is better.
Yeah, at least I get Boston Dynamics robots. You just usher in like shitty healthcare.
It sounds like you're
but between I'm a healthy, able-bodied male who's capable of making in the American economy. So yeah, you and your ilk and your useful stupidity. Usher in.
Yeah, but I condemn Hasan when he does the. Wait, I condemn
Hasan. Socialized healthcare.
Wait. But
I usher in. Murder bots.
Wait, but the thing is, I condemn.
And murder bots are cool.
I condemn Hasan going to China. You should not have simped for China on that trip, Hasan. I condemn it. I have no problem doing that.
I'm sure he'll start listening. I'm sure he won't.
Oh, don't be a prick now, you piece of shit. You are such a piece of shit.
I'm sure he's listening. Number two, I'm sure he won't get a glowing review in the Times or CNN or some other fucking shit lib rag in the next 6 months.
I can't speak for them. Wait, I can't speak for fucking CNN, whatever. What I can speak for is myself. So how are you
defending against the concept that liberals are useful fucking idiots for far lefties? Because all you're saying is, oh yeah, you're right. We are useful idiots for far lefties.
So I don't know, like CNN and the news, they cover a bunch of people making overtures to China, including Republicans, including I'm sure media people who go to different places. I'm sure they would cover, for example, Tucker Carlson going to Russia. They cover it. It's your contention that like they shouldn't cover it. I don't know what is your view on that? They shouldn't cover it, or they shouldn't give glowing reports of it?
My view is unapologetically simping for the Chinese regime is no different than simping for Nazi Germany in the early 20th century.
Okay, I don't think that
it's morally identical.
I don't take that view, but I condemn it nonetheless. I think that you should not simp for the Chinese Communist Party.
So let's break that down. So hold on. You're aware of the fact that the Uyghur Western Chinese ethno-religious group that's predominantly Muslim engaged in some jihadist terrorism in the early 2000s, and as a result, the Chinese government mass incarcerated all adult males for like a decade, put them into re-education camps, then took all of the females.
Yeah, like what you want to do with Mahmoud Khalil.
I'm not done yet, by the way. Shut the fuck up. I'm literally describing a fucking cultural genocide.
What you want to do to Mahmoud
interrupting me halfway through. Why? As a matter of fact, let me ask you this question. Why did you feel the need?
Yes, I'll tell you why. Because you're yapping.
No, I want to ask you a question. Why did you feel the need? I was describing a cultural genocide that makes China morally comparable to Nazi Germany in the early 20th century. You couldn't wait for 30 seconds.
Just say you don't need to go into the history. Root and stem, chapter and verse.
Yes, I do. Why? No, yes, I do, because these are your fellow travelers.
my fellow
These are
travelers.
your peers.
Oh, so I'm responsible
Talk to the
for
Vanguard about China. Let's see if they describe the Uyghur genocide the same way I do.
Wait. So you believe
Talk
it's a
to them. Talk to them about the
believe
Falun Gong.
You believe
Talk
it's
to
a
them
genocide.
about religious minorities in China and see if they describe.
You do believe it's a genocide.
The world the same way I do.
You do believe it's a genocide.
What's that?
You do believe it's a genocide.
I believe it's a cultural genocide.
Okay, it's a cultural genocide,
which is bad enough.
Okay, but you're saying it's not a genocide? It's only a cultural genocide?
It's not. So when you use the word genocide, obviously people think of the Holocaust and mass execution. That's not what happened in China. What happened was a cultural genocide where they destroyed their religion, destroyed their culture, and effectively made them Han Chinese, except for music and dress.
Yeah, and you're
so
acting like
it was an
you're acting like I support
police
that.
state-oriented cultural genocide.
You're acting like I support that. Like I think that it's like a good thing. Just to be clear, a lot of these like ethno supremacist policies, these are the kinds of people that you think are like based in shit. People like, I'm gonna say it, P.F. Jung and all these people are stressing the importance of, you know, ethno homogeneity. These are things that you kind of talk about a lot in the context of America. Just to be clear about that. But even putting that aside,
yeah, but obviously the separation between my perspectives on cultural integration and the perspectives of the Chinese government is that I think it should be done through sane immigration controls and voluntary integration, not cultural genocide.
I mean,
do you think there's a moral difference between sane immigration controls and intentional integration versus cultural genocide? Can you just answer that question real quick, yes or no?
When framed that way, of course, there's a difference. But of course, the whole difference, it has to be assumed in that way you're framing the sane policies would be something like what? Banishment for people like Mahmoud Khalil, banishment for people who think differently than you, and you know, breaking up families on a account of political belief. And
okay, so hold on. Support. What it sounds like, and I know you're not this stupid, so but you can forward stupid arguments if you want. What you're saying is that you actually don't see very much space between we control who comes into the United States as a country. If they're aligned with our values, they can voluntarily enter our country and integrate into our society. If they don't, they can fuck off. There is not that much difference between that policy and taking an ethno-religious minority in your country that has presented some troublesome issues and then incarcerating the males, forcing the females to live with the ethno-religious dominant majority, and then effectively, if anybody complains about it, you kill them or incarcerate them. There's differences. I think moral difference between these two claims.
Listen, I think that what China did with the Uyghurs is worse than what Trump is doing with his various different policies. I want to be clear about that. But like,
yeah, but the way that you're saying it makes it sound like they're comparable.
No. But you're comparing it to the Holocaust, first of all, and second of all, we're talking about some policies that are being whitewashed by people that you run in circles. But just being clear, for example, you know, the policies of racially, protectionally stopping people in this country, the policies of denaturalization, they're trying to get rid of birthright citizenship, and yes, the policies of trying to discriminate on the basis of viewpoint when it comes to immigration decisions within the country when you've already been granted access to the country and where the First Amendment applies. And so, yeah, I know. I totally think that what happened with the Uyghur stuff is totally despicable. It's one of many reasons why I despise the Chinese Communist Party and why I think that simping for it is bad. You made the comparison to the Holocaust and the Nazis, and you're saying it's the equivalent of it. I'm not convinced of that. I think you haven't even come close to establishing your case for it.
Because I wasn't done.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. Let me continue to establish my case, and I'm going to point out something that's happening conversationally. What I'm trying to establish is that you are comfortable with fellow travelers who do abhorrent political fucking sweeping for some of the worst crimes humanity is capable of perpetrating upon each other. And then instead of being like, oh yeah, that's pretty fucking bad, we should check them on that shit, I'm going to be more aggressive in reference to this topic, this topic, this topic. What you did is you said, oh, well, there's plenty of bad people on your side.
No, what?
No shit, Pisco.
Listen,
I fight the bad people on my side all of the time. It's like a majority of how I spend my time on the internet.
Yeah, like I don't even understand though, but you're claiming that I don't fight.
Hey, officer, hold on. Real quick. Officer Nasty, if you're such a fucking Pisco fan and you love him, go over to his chat. If you come back and you're a fucking smug bitch in my chat, you're catching a fucking ban. That's the last time. I understand it. We have a rapport. I'm matching my streamer. Okay. Guess what? Your streamer right now is Pisco. If you want to go simp for Pisco, go to fucking Pisco's chat. If you want to be a cunt in my chat, I'm gonna ban you. You understand? That's your last warning.
This is like when you're. Right. Do you have ever been in like those play dates you had when a kid, and the kid that you're like at their house, they start arguing with their mom? That's what it feels like just then. I'm watching them argue with his mom.
I hope you're uncomfortable. Good.
No, okay. Listen, I'm trying to say is like,
hold on, we're not done.
I know. I'm just trying to say people will say things like, "You don't attack the left enough. You don't spend enough time like talking about China and stuff." Like, why? Like, I don't like China. I think simping for it is gross. I said that. I have no problem saying it. I don't understand what I've done wrong.
Okay, well, to be honest, I'm gonna finish the other reason why I think simping for China is comparable to simping for Nazi Germany in the early 20th century. But I understand that what you said is basically like, well, I don't simp for China and I disavow it whenever I see it. I heard you, and I'm acknowledging what you said. Okay. So the other way that I think it's perfectly fine to compare China to early 20th century Nazi Germany is because of the Falun Gong religious minority and the accusations of forced organ harvesting that is corroborated by the United Nations. Okay. I don't know why you're smirking. There's not very much funny about it.
No, it's just because I see those guys around all in New York. It's funny because you mentioned them and I see them around New York all the time. That's all. Jesus.
Okay. So the Falun Gong are a religious minority in China. They are oppressed. They're declared enemies of the state de facto. So if you're caught being a part of this religious minority, you will automatically be incarcerated. Not just that, but the United Nations, you don't even have to take my word for it. You can say, oh, Conor's like a crazy Red Scare anti-communist kook. Literally just Google United Nations, China, forced organ harvesting. Okay. And if you Google that, what you're going to find is that effectively any rich person can fly to China and obtain vital organs for a price within a couple of weeks. And the accusation is that China, through imprisoning dissidents and through imprisoning religious minorities who refuse to bend to the will of the Chinese state, they're saying, oh, you don't want to be a part of us? Well, therefore, you are an expendable part of our non-corporative body. And so what they're accused of doing is euthanizing said people and then killing them by harvesting their organs so they can in turn sell it to rich foreigners. Okay? And this is like at the core of political corporatism, treating the dominant group as a body and treating foreigners as parasites or treating foreigners as a virus. Okay? So what I would say is, in effect, modern China, if you look at the Giovanni Gentile definition of fascism, political corporatism, and flexible authoritarianism, they are a modern fascist nation that would make Hitler and Mussolini and Giovanni Gentile proud. And so to have a successful state capitalist, authoritarian society that is capable of doing these evils, and it's simped for by broad swaths of the left, and it's not called out as akin to being worshiping Nazis, I think that the fucking fox is in the hen house with you cunts, and you're not even paying attention.
I'm definitely paying attention to people talking to Hasan Piker. Like, if you think that this issue hasn't been sufficiently percolating in at least my content, where it's like a predominating criticism of like me for some reason simping for Hasan's views on this or that, I just don't think that you're paying attention. How am I like having the wool pulled over my eyes as to Hasan's nasty views? It just feels like that is just something that's been aired.
Because the Vanguard are probably identical. And right. I saw a conversation between you and the Vanguard in which, sorry for making the camera blurry, in which you were trying to convince them that at minimum they should vote Democrat.
And
like that was the basis of the conversation.
Yeah, and they agreed.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, one of them agreed. One of them begrudgingly agreed. Mm-hmm. But I almost guarantee you that in that conversation, you were friendly.
Yeah,
you were courteous. You were tactful.
Yes.
You were trying to drag them your way. You were trying to take people who were further left than you, and you were trying to drag them your way. Okay.
In a manner
And
of
by the
speaking.
way, it's commendable. I actually think that that is a good thing to do. However, I think that the way that you carry yourself in those zones, if I carried myself, well, actually, I kind of do this anyways. I just pay attention. I don't pay attention to the people who
Yeah,
criticize me.
I mean,
If,
you're
if
quite nice to
I,
these people.
well, right. Well, that's what I was going to say. All the heat I get for going to the dissident right and trying to drag them my way, you are guilty of the exact same crime.
I don't know that I am on two bases.
You are. As a matter of fact, what I was trying to do through my 30 or 40 minutes worth of yapping was I was trying to articulate the cultural critique and economic overlap between you and socialists and communists who sent for the Chinese regime, but we didn't get that far.
I think that on the one hand, I just view the Vanguard as better people than like the Gripers. I don't think you grant that.
I mean, I don't know them on a personal level. Do they work their jobs? Do they pay their taxes? Do they take care of their
Yeah.
family members? You know, what kind of people are they on a personal level?
They just seem like dudes with the pretty radical left wing views on some stuff, but I don't get the sense that they're prejudiced. I don't get a sense that they're encouraging their audience to do horrible things. Like I think Fuentes often encourages, I think, the worst in our youth. I don't think that they're responsible for spreading like hatred of other people's from on the basis of some sort of immutable characteristic. I view them as better people than some on the dissident right.
Yeah,
like
but that's
Darwin
that's the nefariousness of the extremes of the left wing. Okay, because you can easily put it within the ideology. Hey, you don't want people to die of thirst, right? Everybody should have access to free, clean drinking water. If you oppose that, you're a piece of shit. Same thing with food, same thing with housing, same thing with medicine. Okay? But what the far left does is they take these noble aspirations that you agree with, they vest their political authority in these quote unquote noble aspirations, and then they do other shit. And they do infinitely more fucked up shit. Dude, just go watch the propaganda. Seriously, just go watch the TV show Chernobyl. It's about the
I've seen
the
Chernobyl.
breakdown. What's that?
I've seen Chernobyl.
So tell me that constantly when people are saying things that need to be said that are inconvenient to the state, that they are not bullied with the collective good of not just the state, but of the people. Tell me they don't use the same rationales that leftists use in order to say, the only way that you would criticize us is if you were an enemy of the people. That rhetoric is all over the place.
I think that's true of some lefties for sure. I don't know if it's true of the people that I like. For example, I think Kyle and Crystal and some of these people are willing to have these conversations and don't have this kind. I mean, they are not all or nothing. I think they're more pragmatic than you give them credit for, and less ideological.
I think Kyle and Crystal. I criticize them for the same reason I criticize right-wing isolationists. It's not because I think that they're bad people who are poorly morally motivated. It's because I think that they think that the American empire is uniquely evil in its omnipresence on the world stage, and therefore we should step back from the world stage and are interfering in overseas conduct, and they don't realize how power works.
That's JD.
They don't
Vance
understand that power abhors a vacuum.
That's JD Vance to a T, man.
Yeah, and fuck him for that. That one of my biggest criticisms of the entire Trump administration is how they handle international affairs.
Let's I want to end on things that we can maybe find some common ground on, because I got to be honest, man, I get blackpilled sometimes in these conversations, bro. It feels like you're going down a dark road that I can't follow. It feels like you're falling for some of these righty, typey, alty, dissident-y people. I don't think I have any power to pull you back.
I was always like this. I was like this when I was advocating for Kamala Harris. When I was saying Kamala Harris was the lesser of two evils, I still believe that there is a negative space at the core of liberalism that is not fully answered by its political adherents, and it's a critical gap being exploited by the malaise of our current society.
I see. Well, thoughts on the Epstein stuff?
I think Stephen Destiny Bennell II is being cringe about it. I think that it is interesting. I think the main thing that hasn't been established is ties to intelligence agencies and whether or not he was active in intelligence circles. That's the only thing that hasn't really been established. Besides that, I do think that it's been relatively well established that he was a billionaire who used his clout, money, and influence in order to predate upon teenage girls and also consume illicit pornography, that he liked to attract people into his inner circle who would ignore his foibles, and then he would leverage that into his own get out of jail free cards. And effectively, I think the federal government failed for 20 years. And I think some of that failure was intentional. If I was to actually try to demonstrate how I think there was a collusion between the federal government and Jeffrey Epstein in order to minimize his prosecution, I would want the Alex Acosta evidence unsealed. I would want the sworn written affidavits of the 40 women that Jeffrey Epstein abused in South Florida.
Interesting. What are your thoughts on what's gonna come next? I think that it's possible that we're not going to. Well, I think it's likely we're not going to see any indictments under this administration or criminal charges, and I think that is sort of like a premise of this document release, that we wouldn't be talking about document release and dumps if we were at the stage of charging people with stuff. And I guess
weirdly enough, did you see Ro Khanna and Thomas Massey talk yesterday?
Yeah, I did.
You saw them say that they think that there's sufficient evidence for at least 6 people to accuse, at least publicly, accuse them of being co-conspirators and maximally charge them.
Be careful. They're referring to who the FBI characterized as co-conspirators at a given time. But I think it's relating probably to the same facts and circumstances that were like in the draft indictment, probably, or the facts from the 90s and the early 2000s. So I'm not so sure that this is sort of a self-standing assessment of culpability from Ro Khanna and Massey. I think that they're identifying people whom the FBI or the DOJ at some point characterized as co-conspirators. I think it's notable for sure. And I'm going to get into why the DOJ is being so fucking weaselly about it. But I'm not convinced that we're going to see any charges. I don't think that it would be wise.
No, I mean, I'm with you
for the administration to do it from their perspective.
There. Well, hold on. So I'm obviously approaching this from a different thing. So let's say that we had pictures or videos of men abusing underage girls, and we had sworn written testimony from and the victims were identifiable. And let's say that we had sworn written affidavits from the victims stating, yeah, no, I was 13 or 14 at the time. Regardless of whether or not they individually want to prosecute, the state could say, you sexually abused a 14-year-old girl in 2003, regardless of whether or not she consented. This is a violation of XYZ statute. Therefore, we're going to prosecute you anyways. I don't know what the statute of limitations is on that form of rape. So I would have to take a look at it. But actually, maybe statute of limitations apply. I don't know.
I'm just like, I think that from the administration's perspective, they're not going to want to charge because they tried to close this case last year in June. And if they charge and they don't get a conviction, that would look horrible. If they charge, then I think Pam Bondi needs to be removed from office. I don't know if there's like an internally sufficient reason to keep Bondi and Patel around if they could have been so wrong in last summer. They must have known that these people
they weren't
were there.
Wrong, right? They were sweeping.
Well, that's what I'm saying from the perspective of the MAGA observer. I don't understand how you can maintain Bondi and Patel in their offices, given everything that's gone on. I think that they're going to be the patsies. I think that they have to go at some point because either there won't be charges.
But I think I think we both know how this is going to play out. So, number one, part of the reason why I was criticizing you guys, I was watching a Live and Learn episode, and I was criticizing you guys for wanting to abolish ICE or spend a lot of political capital this summer on reform ICE statutes. And I was thinking to myself, what a fucking waste of political capital. That's what I was thinking.
Of course, you would say that.
And so I would say that.
You
know
want
why?
them to be able to murder, yeah.
Well, I would say it's because you twats need to win first. So you should be maximizing your capacity to win in the Senate, which I know is a long shot, but you should 100% be maximizing your win in the House. And if you're maximizing your win in the House and the Senate, that means you need to have a maximalist electoral position, because I would actually have to take a look at the chances of you guys winning the Senate. I think it's pretty low. But effectively, like, if you did, you would be able to impeach Trump. And I think that there is sufficient evidence to at least impeach him, and at maximum, even remove him from fucking office. And I would love that shit.
You think you're going to get...
It's not going to happen. I wish it was.
You think you're going to get 16 or 17 Republicans to remove him from office? To put JD in charge?
Like 3. You get like 3.
I think that's code.
Unless you actually had video or pictures of Donald Trump sexually abusing a teenage girl, I don't think you're getting 16 Republicans.
You're that confident that you would get 16 if that happened?
No, I'm not. The cult is so deep. The cult is so deep. The claws are so deep. No, I would even, let's say that we actually had a picture of Donald Trump sexually abusing a teenage girl, and that was like released but partially censored in order to fully incriminate him in the sexual abuse of young children. I still think 16 senators flipping on him would be a long shot.
Yeah, I do too. I think that your point about ICE, it just is this risk averse nonsense, in my opinion. It's more of this kind of like idle chatter that we should be like, we shouldn't overstep, and like, yeah, we shouldn't overstep, but I just think this is the appropriate policy, and because I think it's the appropriate policy, I think it should be implemented, and therefore I think we should run on it. If it were like
political capital is a limited resource, yeah. Okay, so do you think that the Americans care about, random people getting shot in the street, but it's 2 homicides out of a country of 330 million that routinely sees 20,000 annual homicides, and then the mass deportations largely apply to non-citizens? So what I would say, if I was dumping all of my... What's that?
With families and connections, and it's affecting people's lives
more
than that.
If you think it's a worthwhile expenditure of political capital, you go for it. But I think you're going to waste a lot of political capital. And where I would be spending it is I would be spending it on affordability, left, right, and center. Trump has promised a golden age.
Well, I think Democrats are planning for that right now.
Republicans.
There's a vote in an hour, I think, for a rule that the majority is trying to implement here that is in the House. And I think the Democrats are potentially going to be able to beat their votes on it. I think Massey is going to vote against the rule, and that will allow Democrats to bring in resolutions regarding the tariffs. And I think that is a centerpiece of any Democratic messaging strategy is to attack those tariffs. I think there's an estimate that says it's costing the average American $1,000. I think that's probably an understatement, but even if it is, I think it's it's like his premier policy. It might be obviated by the Supreme Court, but I think that we should jump on it, and we should do cost of living. I just don't think that we need to only do cost of living. I think that there's the abuses from ICE are evocative. They're part of the message, and I think it should be included.
Okay. You have 10 political capital eggs. Okay. You have 10 baskets, and you are allowed to allocate them however you want. So you got 10 eggs. That's your political capital egg count. I would put like 8 or 9 eggs into affordability. And I would put 1 egg into stopping mass deportation or humanizing mass deportation. How are you allocating your political capital eggs?
I think affordability is a big topic. I would put 6 in healthcare. I would put
6 in healthcare.
Yeah.
Holy shit! Out of 10?
Yeah.
God damn. You think the health insurance subsidy expiration has pissed off that many people?
It's not just that. It's an issue that with respect to affordability, it's like the biggest concern. And people, it's just like a constant, and Democrats, it's their best issue. It's always been their best issue. It relates to affordability. So I would put a lot of emphasis on healthcare. That's what the polls say.
God damn, that seems like a mad dry topic though to be doing stump speeches on, don't you think?
No. I think it's like a little bit, I mean, it's a stylized example. I think it relates to affordability. I in general think that most of it should be on affordability and shit like that. But I just to emphasize that I think that healthcare is a big concern for the American people. And I think it's undervalued even by a lot of political commentators, how relevant that is to when asked American people, they will say healthcare. Yeah, I don't think that you need to spend like a majority of your time talking about ICE and that kind of shit. But I do think that we need to have a narrative on immigration, and it should be a positive one about protecting the rights of the American people and preventing the abuses of ICE, and in my opinion, abolishing it.
What about controlling the border, though? Because so for instance, this is one of the things that I think is de-emphasized in Democratic rhetoric, which I think actually makes you guys incredibly vulnerable. So, okay, protecting the rights of citizens. Anybody who actually cares about the Constitution, they're with you. Making sure that, the deportation operations are humane and we're not being monstrous shitbirds. Anybody who has a conscience is with you. What are you going to do with the concept of actually securing the border, though? Because so for instance, I'm not saying this is true. I'm saying this is the narrative. Up until the Biden administration, it was kind of like the routine number that I heard was like 11 million. Okay, that's how many illegal immigrants were in the country, was 11 million. Okay, now 13 million was like the estimate that I Googled and saw the other day. So apparently only like 2 million people actually got in and stuck around. However, the immigrant waves that came in the Biden years were large. You can actually look at them statistically. They're fucking huge.
Yeah.
And so the question is, how do you actually secure the border, or is securing the border even a priority?
Well, right now it's being secured, I think, through cruelty and illegal conduct, including like stopping all processing, deprivations of rights. And so it's really scared people from coming to the border. It's done that, but obviously I don't give credit for rampant law violations producing a result like that. So I don't think Democrats really need to focus for the midterm sake on border security. I think they should focus on the internal stuff that polls way, way, way worse. So Trump is, I think, net negative on, he's like neutral to slightly positive on border, but in immigration overall, he's deeply negative now. And that is different. And so I don't think that Democrats should be spending much time at all talking about the border.
Okay. Then what I would say for rhetorical effectiveness, I would do 1 for border security. I would do 1 for, well, I might even do like 2 for corruption and holding like the Epstein class. I think the Epstein class is a brilliant rhetorical phrase. Like whatever writer, or even if John Ossoff or whoever came up with that by himself, saying the Epstein class, because Epstein might have been a donor who donated to quote unquote both sides and has ties to both sides or whatever, but he is Donald Trump's friend, and it's Donald Trump who's currently sweeping for him. So I think that hurts Republicans way more than it hurts like any remnant Bill Clinton simps that are still in the party. So Epstein class, I would say, is easily 1. And then what I would say, like if I had eggs, 1 would be border security, 1 would be the Epstein and corruption class, and then 8 would be affordability. And out of those 8, 2 would be healthcare. And that's how I would distribute my shit.
Well, I appreciate that input. I think that we're aligned that affordability is the most important issue, and I would agree with that. And I don't know how separate and disentangled that is from like the general economy, which people's feelings are, kind of they correlate, right? The affordability issue and the economy issue kind of correlate. But I do appreciate that we can agree on that at the end there. Yeah, Connor, I think that this was an interesting conversation.
Don't get blackpilled, bro. I'm the nicest Republican you know.
Yeah, but yeah. I think
don't get blackpilled, bro. There's plenty of people worse than me.
I'm not
Don't
saying
get black pilled.
Listen,
go smoke a dude. Go for a lap. Go for a walk around the city.
Listen. I just think that you need to really be skeptical of these people. They're not good people. These are bad people. These are really bad people, and don't think you're going to control them. They're going to control shit, and they're wily, and they're survivors, and they are maniacal and ego driven. I just think that you don't want this.
That is the one lever that you are consistently going to be able to pull not in the midterms. I'm finding if they're a MAGA Republican, I'm voting against them. If there's a normie, centrist, neo-lib Republican, I'm voting against them.
Yeah, but you mean in the midterms?
But if there's a Democrat, I'm voting for a Democrat.
Okay.
So like MAGA, I'm going to try to punish in the midterms. Okay. It's not voting for the Democrats, it's voting against MAGA and trying to stomp them as hard as possible in the midterms. Okay. In 28, the lever that you're consistently going to be able to pull, and it's going to give me an element of self-doubt, is what is Vance saying versus what is he going to deliver? Because he can probably, pull we're going to make the best economy ever, and we're going to unleash the levers of capitalism, and we're going to make sure that American families are strong, and we're going to secure the border, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. That's all the rhetoric. What is he going to do? And if the techno-feudal lords and the crypto bros are already out of control by that election cycle, then you can just come to me and say, hey, man, Newsom's going to reel these people in.
Man.
They're going too crazy. They're going too crazy with it. They need to be reeled back in. And I'll go, oh shit, you're right.
They're out of control. They're out of control now. I think they're out of control now. But time will tell, and I'm sure we'll have more conversations about it. But that being said, why don't you plug out your shit?
Yeah,
folks, we're still going to be on after this. We have to.
My name's Conor.
Go for it. Sorry.
My name's Conor. I run a few channels. Counterpoints 40K needs some love because I got a bunch of copyright strikes that I've appealed and successfully won, but I need people to go back in there, watch the content. So if you're into Warhammer 40K, go check out those breakdowns. They're excellent. Help me kickstart my channel after that copyright debacle. If you're into sci-fi or Star Wars, type in Counterpoint Sci-Fi. I'm currently breaking down The Expanse. Check out Counterpoint Star Wars. I'm currently working my way through the Clone Wars. I do the same breakdown formula. If you thought that my political insights were interesting and you want to challenge your brain, or if you're a lefty who said, hey, Conor, you're dead wrong on Gramsci and Marcuse, and here's something you didn't consider and all that kind of stuff, you can come over and tell me about it. I'm not going to ban you for telling me about things that I don't know or don't have a full thing in. However, if you're a twat and you come over and you're like, Pisco blew you the fuck out, you should kill yourself, you're going to get banned. Okay. So, but Counterpoints Politics and Valor Media Network, VALOR Media Common Spelling Network Common Spelling, those are the other places that you can find me in reference to political commentary. So Pisco and I'm sure will have a tete-a-tete duel in the next couple of weeks.
Well, appreciate you, Conor, and we'll talk soon, okay?
All right. Bye, buddy.